Good evening, and welcome back to Bedtime and Historian. Have you ever wondered how a single human mind can quietly reshape the daily life of nearly everyone on Earth without most people ever knowing that person's name? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is there for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Nikola Tesla entered the world at midnight during a violent summer storm in the small village of Smiljan in 1856. The place itself sat on a quiet fault line of history. It was a military borderland of the Austrian Empire, a region shaped by discipline, bureaucracy, and the constant awareness that larger powers decided the fate of ordinary lives. The roads were unpaved, the houses modest, the rhythm of daily life guided by church bells, seasons, and the slow passage of imperial authority. To be born there was to grow up understanding limits of class, of opportunity, of movement, and also to grow accustomed to endurance. Tesla's family lived simply but intellectually. His father, Milutin Tesla, was a Serbian Orthodox priest, a man trained in classical literature, theology, and rhetoric. He believed deeply in the power of words and memory, and he expected intellectual rigour from his children. Books were present in the home, treated with respect, not decoration. Reading was not leisure but discipline. His mother, Duca Tesla, had no formal education, yet she possessed an extraordinary practical intelligence. She designed and built household tools, solved mechanical problems instinctively, and managed domestic life with quiet efficiency. In her, Tesla absorbed something essential, an understanding that invention could arise not from institutions, but from need. The household followed a steady routine. Meals were simple and repetitive. Clothing was durable rather than decorative. Evenings often involved reading aloud, prayer, or discussion rather than entertainment. Tesla grew up in a culture that valued restraint. Emotional displays were discouraged. One learned to endure discomfort quietly. This atmosphere shaped him deeply. Throughout his life, he would remain disciplined in habits, sensitive to disorder, and uneasy with excess. Tesla was not a physically strong child. He suffered frequent illnesses, fevers, and periods of weakness that confined him indoors. These episodes forced him into solitude early, and solitude became familiar rather than frightening. While other children played outside, he read, observed, and imagined. His memory was unusually precise. He could recall entire pages of books after a single reading. This ability impressed adults but also isolated him from peers. He did not think in fragments. He thought in complete images, often visualizing machines in exact detail long before attempting to build them. The world around him was changing slowly. Industrialization had not yet reached Smiljan, but its distant effects were felt. Railroads were expanding across Europe. Telegraph lines crept along roadsides. Newspapers carried stories of machines transforming cities far away. For villagers, these changes felt abstract and remote. For Tesla, they stirred curiosity. He became fascinated by natural forces, lightning, water wheels, wind, magnetism. Storms, in particular, held his attention. He watched them carefully, not with fear, but with focus, noticing patterns, rhythms, repetition. Education followed the rigid structure of imperial schools. Teachers emphasized obedience, memorization, and repetition. Tesla excelled academically, but struggled emotionally with authority. He obeyed rules outwardly, but resisted them inwardly. He questioned instructions silently, often devising alternative methods in his own mind. This tendency would later place him at odds with institutions that demanded conformity rather than originality. Adolescence brought new challenges. Tesla developed intense mental imagery that sometimes overwhelmed him. Bright flashes of light appeared before his eyes. Thoughts arrived fully formed, without effort, and demanded attention. He learned to manage this inner flood by imposing strict routines on himself, walking at fixed times, counting steps, arranging objects symmetrically. These habits provided control. They were not rituals of superstition, but tools for mental order. His father hoped Nikola would follow him into the priesthood. This expectation weighed heavily on Tesla. The church offered security, status, and a clear path. Engineering and science, by contrast, were uncertain and risky. When Tesla fell seriously ill as a teenager, bedridden and weak, the future seemed undecided. In a moment of quiet negotiation, his father promised that if Nikola recovered, he would be allowed to pursue technical studies. The illness passed. The promise remained. Tesla left home to attend technical school, entering a broader world shaped by factories, rail stations, and formal engineering culture. The pace of life accelerated. Cities were louder, dirtier, and more crowded than Smiljan. Workers laboured long hours. Housing was cramped. Social life followed strict class divisions. Tesla observed these conditions closely, absorbing not only technical knowledge but also the human cost of progress. He studied obsessively. Sleep became secondary. He attended lectures during the day and worked through the night. His professors noticed his brilliance, but also his refusal to accept conventional limitations. He often challenged established methods, proposing theoretical improvements that others considered impractical. This tendency won admiration but also suspicion. Institutions valued innovation only when it remained controllable. The Europe Tesla moved through was one of empires and hierarchies. Jobs were obtained through connections as much as merit. Advancement required patience and compliance. Tesla possessed neither. He worked briefly in various engineering roles, contributing ideas but growing frustrated with incremental progress. He did not want to improve machines slightly. He wanted to rethink systems entirely. Daily life during these years was demanding. Food was basic and repetitive. Housing was shared and often uncomfortable. Work days were long. Yet Tesla imposed personal discipline. He walked for hours each evening, thinking. He avoided alcohol and indulgence. He spoke little, listened carefully, and observed human behaviour as attentively as machinery. These habits formed a stable core that would remain with him even as circumstances changed dramatically. The decision to leave Europe was not impulsive. It was the result of accumulated frustration. Tesla understood that the industrial centres of the future were shifting westward. America represented speed, scale, and risk. It also represented a culture less bound by tradition. In 1884, carrying little more than letters of introduction and a small amount of money, Tesla boarded a ship bound for New York. The crossing itself was uncomfortable and uncertain. Steerage accommodations were crowded, food was poor, storms disrupted sleep. Yet Tesla spent much of the journey thinking rather than resting, imagining possibilities. He arrived in a city already defined by energy, noise, motion, ambition. New York was chaotic compared to Europe, but it was alive in a way that immediately captured him. He arrived with precise expectations and little understanding of the social realities he would face. America rewarded results, not theory. It valued speed over elegance. Tesla would soon learn that brilliance alone was not enough. Yet as he stepped onto American soil, his habits intact and his mind alert, he stood at the threshold of a life that would quietly reshape the modern world. This was the beginning not of legend, but of long work, careful observation, and endurance. Tesla did not yet know how often he would be misunderstood, or how much of his life would be spent alone. But the child of storms had arrived in a world powered by ambition, and he was prepared to meet it with patience, discipline, and an unwavering belief in ideas that existed, for now, only in his mind. Learning without rest. Tesla's first months in America unfolded with little ceremony. New York in the mid-1880s was not a place that paused to welcome newcomers. The streets were dense with carts, horses, construction debris, and people moving with purpose. The smell of coal, smoke, and seawater lingered constantly. Electric light was still rare, unevenly distributed, and unreliable. Most homes relied on gas lamps or oil. Nightfall did not slow the city, it merely changed its rhythm. Tesla entered this environment already trained in self-discipline. He rose early, walked long distances, ate sparingly, and avoided distractions. These habits were not eccentricities yet, they were simply survival strategies. He had little money and no safety net. His clothing was plain, his accent strong, his manner formal. He stood out, but not in ways that inspired confidence from employers. America admired confidence expressed outwardly. Tesla's confidence lived inwardly. He secured work quickly but not comfortably. Engineering labour in New York was divided sharply between vision and execution. Theoretical understanding was less valued than immediate results. Tesla was assigned tasks beneath his capacity, repairing equipment, troubleshooting failures, adjusting existing systems. He did this work carefully, thoroughly, and without complaint, but his dissatisfaction grew. His mind continued to operate at a different scale, imagining systems not yet built, networks not yet conceived. The pace of work was relentless. Days extended late into the evening. Mistakes were costly and punished harshly. Supervisors expected obedience, not discussion. Tesla complied outwardly while privately redesigning systems in his mind. This mental parallel life became essential. He learned to endure monotony without surrendering curiosity. During this period, his physical health fluctuated. He slept little, often only a few hours a night. He ate at the same modest restaurants repeatedly, preferring predictable meals. He avoided alcohol and social gatherings. While others sought relief from exhaustion through entertainment, Tesla sought order. Long walks remained his primary release. He walked after work, regardless of weather, sometimes for hours, replaying technical problems in his mind until solutions emerged fully formed. Memory continued to define his learning. He absorbed technical manuals rapidly, retaining precise details. He also read literature, philosophy, and newspapers, not for leisure but context. He believed that invention could not be separated from society. Machines existed within economic systems, political priorities, and human habits. Understanding these forces was necessary, even if frustrating. American work culture surprised him. Loyalty was transactional. Contracts shifted easily. Promises were flexible. Innovation was encouraged publicly but constrained privately by financial risk. Tesla observed that many engineers understood how machines worked, but not why they were built the way they were. Decisions were driven by cost, not elegance. Efficiency was measured in immediate profit rather than long-term stability. These observations sharpened his sense of isolation. He did not feel resentment, but distance. His inner life grew more structured as his outer environment grew more chaotic. He imposed numerical rules on himself, counting steps, dividing tasks into precise units of time, arranging objects symmetrically. These habits helped him maintain clarity amid noise and unpredictability. Illness returned intermittently, nervous exhaustion, headaches, sensitivity to light and sound followed periods of intense work. He responded not by slowing down, but by refining control. He limited his interactions. He avoided physical contact. He became increasingly attentive to cleanliness, order, and routine. These behaviours were not visible to others as pathology. They appeared simply as discipline. Financial insecurity remained constant. Wages were modest and inconsistent. Tesla saved meticulously, spending only what was necessary. He lived in small rented rooms, often moving when rent increased. These rooms were sparsely furnished. A bed, a desk, a chair, books, notebooks. He preferred simplicity, possessions, complicated movement and thought. Despite constraints, his learning accelerated. He began developing ideas related to alternating current, not as abstract theory, but as practical response to inefficiencies he observed daily. Direct current systems required frequent power stations, heavy wiring, and suffered significant losses over distance. These limitations frustrated him. He saw no fundamental reason electricity should behave this way. The solution appeared gradually, refined during walks, visualized fully before any physical model existed. Yet he spoke little of these ideas. Experience had taught him caution. Institutions rewarded incremental improvement, not systemic change. Tesla waited, refining concepts internally until they were complete. He believed that incomplete ideas weakened credibility. Only when a system was fully imagined, tested mentally, and proven stable did he consider presenting it. Social life remained minimal. Tesla did not form close friendships during this period. His manner was polite but reserved. He avoided casual conversation. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, his sentences were precise, formal, and sometimes misunderstood as aloofness. In truth, he simply preferred clarity over charm. The city itself continued to transform around him. Construction expanded vertically. Bridges rose. Factories multiplied. Immigrants arrived daily, each carrying expectations and anxieties. Tesla observed this human tide with interest. He understood that technology shaped daily routines, work hours, lighting, transportation, communication. These changes affected families, sleep patterns, and social structures. Electricity was not merely a technical issue, it was a social one. Gradually, opportunity aligned with preparation. Tesla encountered individuals willing to listen, not because they fully understood his ideas, but because they sensed their potential. This did not result in immediate success. It resulted in further work, further testing, further patience. He accepted setbacks without drama. Failure to him was data. By the end of this period, Tesla had established a rhythm. He worked, walked, thought, refined, and waited. His learning was no longer confined to classrooms or manuals. It extended to observing human systems, financial pressures, and institutional behavior. He understood that invention required not only insight but endurance. This phase of his life lacked public recognition. There were no headlines, no demonstrations, no acclaim. Yet it was essential. It formed the foundation upon which everything else would rest. Tesla did not see this time as wasted. He saw it as preparation, learning without rest, shaping ideas patiently within a world not yet ready to receive them. Empire and ambition. By the time Tesla began to move between engineering posts in Europe, the continent itself was caught between tradition and acceleration. Empires still ruled borders, currencies, and education, yet their authority was increasingly strained by industrial demands. Railways stitched together provinces that once felt distant. Factories reshaped labour. Cities expanded faster than housing or sanitation could keep pace. Engineers were suddenly essential, yet rarely powerful. They were expected to serve systems they did not design. Tesla's early professional life unfolded within this tension. After completing his formal studies, he entered a world that valued credentials but distrusted imagination. Engineering firms operated hierarchically. Young engineers followed instructions, refined existing designs, and avoided disruption. Innovation was permitted only when it could be tightly controlled. Tesla accepted positions in telegraph and electrical companies across the Austro-Hungarian territories and later in France, moving as opportunity and frustration dictated. Daily work followed rigid schedules. Offices opened early and closed late. Paperwork filled as much time as machinery. Reports mattered as much as results. Tesla performed his duties meticulously. He repaired generators, improved efficiency, and solved persistent problems others had accepted as unavoidable. Supervisors noticed his effectiveness but grew uneasy with his questions. He did not merely ask how to improve a system, he asked why it existed in that form at all. The Europe Tesla navigated was layered with class distinction. Engineers occupied an ambiguous social position. They were educated but not elite, skilled but replaceable. Advancement often depended on patronage rather than merit. Tesla, formal and reserved, struggled with this culture. He did not cultivate relationships strategically. He expected ideas to speak for themselves. This expectation repeatedly disappointed him. Despite professional constraints, his internal ambition expanded. Tesla's mind increasingly returned to the inefficiencies of direct current systems. The more he worked within them, the more he recognized their structural limitations. These were not minor flaws. They were consequences of fundamental assumptions. He began imagining systems where electricity flowed differently, where current alternated naturally, reducing loss and enabling transmission over distance. He did not sketch these ideas immediately. Instead, he visualized them with increasing precision. Machines assembled themselves in his mind. He rotated components mentally, testing balance, heat, vibration. He adjusted parameters silently during long walks through city streets, across bridges, along riverbanks. This method allowed him to experiment without material cost, but it also isolated him further from colleagues who relied on physical prototypes. Workplace culture discouraged such abstraction. Managers preferred visible progress, wires laid, motors spinning, meters registering output. Tesla delivered these results, but his deeper work remained unseen. This invisibility contributed to his growing restlessness. He felt constrained not by difficulty, but by misalignment between his thinking and institutional expectations. Living conditions during these years varied, but were rarely comfortable. Tesla rented modest rooms near workplaces. Furniture was minimal. He kept his surroundings orderly, even austere. He ate simple meals at regular times, often at the same establishments, preferring predictability. His clothing remained formal but worn. Appearance mattered to him, not as vanity, but as structure. Order in dress mirrored order in thought. Health remained fragile. Periods of intense mental activity were followed by exhaustion. He experienced heightened sensitivity to sound and light. Loud environments fatigued him quickly. He responded by controlling exposure, working at night, walking alone, choosing quieter routes. These adaptations allowed him to continue functioning at a high level, but they also reinforced solitude. Social interaction was limited, but not absent. Tesla observed people carefully, noting how industrial life shaped behavior. Workers moved quickly, spoke briefly, conserved energy. Supervisors measured time obsessively. Leisure was scarce and often numbing rather than restorative. Tesla concluded that technology did not merely serve society, it reshaped human rhythms. He believed that better systems could reduce strain, but only if designed with human experience in mind. During this period, he experienced moments of clarity that bordered on certainty. While walking one evening, he visualized a complete alternating current motor system in detail. The insight arrived suddenly but fully formed. He later described it not as invention but as recognition, as if the system had always existed, waiting to be seen. This experience confirmed his belief in his method. It also intensified his frustration with environments that could not support such work, yet Europe offered limited avenues for pursuing these ideas. Capital was cautious, institutions were conservative, electrical infrastructure investments favored established systems. Tesla understood that proposing radical change required not only technical proof, but financial courage. He did not possess either independently. His ambition exceeded his context. The contrast between empire and ambition became increasingly stark. The imperial systems around him valued stability, predictability, and control. Tesla valued efficiency, elegance, and scalability. These values were not easily reconciled. He began to consider relocation not as escape, but as necessity. America, he believed, offered a different balance: less tradition, more risk, greater appetite for transformation. Before leaving, Tesla continued to work diligently. He did not sabotage existing systems or withdraw effort. His sense of duty remained strong. He believed that professionalism required excellence regardless of personal dissatisfaction. This belief earned him respect but not opportunity. Praise did not translate into autonomy. The decision to leave Europe matured slowly. It involved practical considerations: employment prospects, financial security, distance from family. It also involved emotional restraint. Tesla was deeply attached to his homeland, its language, its customs. Yet he recognized that loyalty to place could limit loyalty to purpose. He chose purpose. As preparations took shape, Tesla reduced his possessions further. He organized notes, preserved essential documents, and discarded anything unnecessary. He approached departure methodically, not romantically. Travel meant disruption. Disruption required control. He planned accordingly. This phase of his life ended quietly. There were no farewells of note, no recognition ceremonies. Tesla left behind colleagues who considered him capable but unusual, diligent but distant. They could not know that his ambition, constrained by empire, was about to encounter a very different world, one that would test not only his ideas but his resilience. The tension between structured authority and individual vision had defined these years. It sharpened Tesla's discipline, clarified his priorities, and confirmed his belief that transformative ideas require environments willing to endure uncertainty. As he prepared to cross the Atlantic, he carried with him not only technical insight, but a refined understanding of power, how it operates, how it resists change, and how it shapes the lives of those who work within it. This understanding would prove as important as any invention. It would guide his choices, temper his expectations, and frame the long, complex relationship he would soon develop with industry, capital, and public imagination. Crossing the Atlantic, the voyage that carried Tesla away from Europe was neither comfortable nor symbolic. It was practical, crowded, and uncertain, like most transatlantic crossings of the era. The ship was filled with immigrants of every kind: labourers, craftsmen, clerks, families with bundled possessions, men travelling alone with little more than documents and hope. The lower deck smelled of salt water, food stored too long, damp clothing, and human proximity. Privacy was scarce. Sleep came in fragments. Noise never fully faded. Tesla adapted without complaint. He had already learned to function amid discomfort. He kept his belongings close and organized. A change of clothes, a few books, papers folded carefully. He spent long hours on deck when weather allowed, walking slowly, thinking. The ocean itself did not inspire romantic reflection. He regarded it as movement and distance, a necessary interval between one system and another. During the crossing, he reviewed his plans repeatedly. He carried letters of introduction, including one addressed to Thomas Edison, whose name already dominated the American electrical industry. Tesla knew Edison's reputation well. He admired his productivity but questioned his methods. Edison was practical, intuitive, and relentless. Tesla was analytical, systematic, and exacting. Their differences were already clear to him, though he had not yet met the man. Arrival in New York was abrupt. The harbour was crowded with ships, docks layered with cargo, workers shouting instructions, carts rattling over uneven surfaces. The skyline was dense but low compared to later decades. Smoke hung in the air. The city felt compressed, active and impatient. There was no gradual transition. One stepped directly from ship to street into motion. Tesla's first impressions were sensory and logistical. Streets were narrow and crowded, horse manure mixed with mud and refuse. Buildings rose tightly together, limiting light. Signage was abundant but inconsistent. Noise came from every direction: construction, traffic, voices, machinery. The city did not pause. It did not soften itself for newcomers. It demanded immediate participation. He found temporary lodging quickly, choosing a modest hotel where he could secure a small private room. The cost concerned him, but stability mattered more. He unpacked carefully, arranging his few possessions with precision. This ritual helped him orient himself. Order, again, became anchor. Within days, Tesla sought employment. He presented himself formally, letters in hand, attire neat but worn. His accent marked him as foreign. His demeanour, polite but reserved, contrasted with the more casual confidence common among American engineers. Interviews were brief. Employers valued experience within American systems, not European credentials. Tesla learned quickly that reputation did not travel easily across oceans. Eventually, he secured work with Edison Machine Works. The introduction letter opened the door, but it did not guarantee comfort. The workshop environment was demanding. Equipment was in constant use. Repairs were urgent. Deadlines were inflexible. Edison's organization operated on momentum. Problems were addressed quickly, sometimes crudely, but effectively enough to satisfy immediate needs. Tesla was assigned to improve generators and troubleshoot failures. He worked long hours, often through the night. His solutions were thorough and technically elegant. He redesigned components mentally before touching them physically, minimizing trial and error. Supervisors noticed his effectiveness. They also noticed his lack of enthusiasm for praise. He accepted acknowledgement quietly and returned to work. Daily life settled into a pattern. Tesla rose early, worked extensively, ate sparingly, walked in the evening, and slept briefly. He avoided social gatherings among workers. He did not drink. He did not gamble. He did not seek entertainment. These choices set him apart. Some interpreted this as arrogance, others as eccentricity. Tesla did not attempt to correct these impressions. New York's working class lived with little margin. Wages were spent quickly on rent and food. Illness or injury could end employment abruptly. Tesla observed these conditions carefully. He recognized how infrastructure failures affected ordinary lives, darkened streets, stalled transportation, interrupted workdays. Electricity was not abstract here. It was utility, safety, and income. Edison's approach to invention contrasted sharply with Tesla's. Edison relied on experimentation through iteration. He tested hundreds of variations physically, adjusting components incrementally. Tesla found this inefficient. He believed that understanding principles reduced the need for exhaustive trial. This difference remained unspoken initially, but it shaped their working relationship. Despite tension, Tesla respected Edison's achievements. Edison had built systems that worked at scale. He had navigated finance, labor, and public perception successfully. Tesla understood that such skills were essential, even if they compromised technical purity. He studied Edison's methods not to imitate them, but to understand the industrial ecosystem he now inhabited. Living conditions remained modest. Tesla's room was small, sparsely furnished. He kept it meticulously clean. He washed clothing frequently. He avoided clutter. These habits were practical but also psychological. Control over environment preserved mental clarity. The city outside offered little of either. Language barriers added strain. Tesla spoke English fluently but formally. Idioms sometimes eluded him. Humor was difficult. He preferred precise expression. This occasionally led to misunderstandings. He accepted them as unavoidable. Communication, like engineering, required adjustment. Financial pressures persisted. Wages were modest relative to hours worked. Tesla saved carefully, aware that employment could end suddenly. He sent occasional support to family in Europe. This obligation mattered to him, reinforcing discipline. As weeks passed, Tesla's dissatisfaction grew. He recognized that Edison's company prioritized short-term fixes over systemic improvement. Direct current systems dominated despite their inefficiencies. Tesla proposed alternatives cautiously, but they were dismissed as impractical or unnecessary. Management valued reliability over transformation. Yet Tesla continued to deliver results. He improved equipment performance, reduced failures, and earned trust. This trust, however, did not translate into influence. Decisions were made elsewhere, driven by financial and competitive pressures Tesla could not control. The cultural divide between Old World and New World became increasingly apparent. American industry celebrated speed and boldness. European training emphasized rigor and completeness. Tesla embodied the latter in an environment that rewarded the former. This mismatch created quiet tension rather than open conflict. Outside of work, Tesla explored the city on foot. He walked along waterfronts, through neighborhoods, across bridges under construction. He observed how electricity altered urban life, street lighting extending activity into night, factories operating longer hours, newspapers printed faster. These observations reinforced his belief that better systems could reduce waste and improve stability. Health remained precarious, exhaustion accumulated, sensitivity to noise intensified. Tesla responded by limiting exposure where possible. He chose walking routes away from busiest streets. He ate at off hours. He rested briefly during the day when possible. These adjustments allowed him to continue functioning without collapse. The transatlantic crossing had delivered Tesla into a world of opportunity constrained by practicality. He understood that America offered scale and resources unavailable in Europe. It also demanded compromise. Ideas had to align with profit, speed, and public perception. Tesla was willing to engage, but not to surrender core principles. This phase of his life marked a transition from theoretical ambition to industrial reality. He learned that invention was not solely technical. It was social, economic, and political. He absorbed these lessons quietly, without resentment. They would inform his choices, successes, and failures in the years ahead. For now, he remained an employee brilliant, disciplined, and increasingly aware that his true work lay beyond the systems he was hired to maintain. The Atlantic crossing had brought him closer to possibility, but also closer to conflict between vision and institution. That conflict would soon surface more clearly, shaping the next chapter of his life. Under Edison's shadow, Tesla's working relationship with Edison Machine Works unfolded without drama, but with steady friction. The workshop itself reflected Edison's priorities. It was loud, crowded, and in constant motion. Equipment was assembled, disassembled, repaired, and repurposed continuously. Tools were worn from use. Wires ran openly along walls and floors. There was little emphasis on symmetry or refinement. What mattered was whether a device functioned long enough to meet demand. Tesla adapted to this environment through focus rather than enthusiasm. He arrived early and stayed late, often working through the night when systems failed or deadlines tightened. He repaired generators that others considered beyond recovery. He improved efficiency where possible without altering the fundamental design. His work reduced outages and stabilized performance. These results were valued, but not deeply examined. Success meant continuity, not innovation. The culture of labor within the company was demanding. Engineers and technicians worked long hours with limited rest. Compensation was tied to output, not hours. Mistakes carried immediate consequences. Praise was brief and often followed by additional tasks. Tesla observed this structure closely. He recognized that productivity was sustained through pressure rather than planning. This approach worked in the short term, but it produced exhaustion and inconsistency. Edison himself was rarely present in the workshop, but his influence was constant. Decisions flowed downward. Priorities shifted quickly. There was little tolerance for prolonged theoretical discussion. Tesla encountered Edison occasionally, always formally. Their interactions were polite but distant. Edison valued Tesla's problem-solving ability but did not seek his conceptual input. Tesla, in turn, respected Edison's accomplishments but found his methods inefficient and resistant to improvement. The difference in their approaches to invention remained unspoken initially. Edison trusted experimentation through repetition. He tested variations physically, relying on persistence rather than abstraction. Tesla trusted understanding. He believed that if principles were clear, unnecessary experiments could be eliminated. Each approach reflected not only personal preference, but broader philosophies shaped by upbringing and environment. Tesla's dissatisfaction grew as he realized that his role would not expand beyond maintenance and incremental improvement. He proposed redesigns cautiously, explaining potential benefits. These proposals were dismissed not because they were incorrect, but because they required structural change. Direct current systems were already deployed. Investments had been made. Changing course involved risk. Edison's organization prioritized stability over optimization. Daily life during this period was physically taxing. Tesla slept little. Noise in the workshop lingered in his mind even during rest. He developed heightened sensitivity to sound and vibration. Sudden noises startled him. Bright light caused discomfort. He managed these sensitivities by maintaining strict routines. He walked alone in the evenings, often late, when streets were quieter. He ate predictable meals. He avoided unnecessary conversation. Financial arrangements became a source of quiet tension. Tesla believed that his contributions justified compensation beyond standard wages. Edison's organization compensated employees according to established scales. Verbal promises were made informally regarding bonuses for successful improvements. Tesla trusted these assurances, interpreting them through a European lens where agreements carried weight regardless of documentation. When Tesla completed a major overhaul of generators, improving performance significantly, he expected recognition consistent with earlier promises. Instead, he received modest acknowledgement and continued assignment. When he raised the issue, he was told the promise had been made in jest. This explanation stunned him. Humour had not been apparent in the exchange. Tesla interpreted the response not as malice, but as cultural mismatch. Nonetheless, the result was clear. His expectations and the institution's practices did not align. This moment marked a turning point. Tesla did not respond with anger or public complaint. He did not confront Edison directly. Instead, he concluded that his position was untenable. His work required autonomy. His ideas required investment. His temperament required clarity. None of these were available within the existing structure. Leaving the company meant immediate uncertainty. Tesla had limited savings. Employment prospects were uncertain. The city offered no safety net, yet remaining meant continued frustration and wasted potential. He chose departure deliberately, accepting risk over stagnation. The transition was abrupt. Tesla left his position without ceremony. He did not secure new employment beforehand. This decision reflected both principle and impatience. He believed that clarity of purpose justified hardship. He underestimated the severity of that hardship. Unemployment in New York was unforgiving. Work was plentiful for labourers, scarce for independent engineers without capital or connections. Tesla sought opportunities to present his ideas. Meetings were difficult to arrange. Potential investors listened politely but hesitated. Alternating current challenged established systems. Backers feared incompatibility, public confusion, and regulatory resistance. Financial pressure intensified quickly. Tesla's savings diminished. Rent became difficult to pay. He moved into cheaper accommodations, then cheaper still. Eventually, he found himself without stable housing. He took manual labour jobs digging ditches, carrying equipment to survive. This work was physically exhausting and mentally demoralizing. Yet Tesla approached it with the same discipline he applied to engineering. He arrived on time, worked steadily, and avoided complaint. Daily routines shifted dramatically. His clothing deteriorated. Meals became irregular. Sleep was fragmented. He continued to walk when possible, though time and energy were limited. He protected his notebooks carefully, ensuring his ideas remained intact. These notebooks became both refuge and burden. They represented potential unrealized and effort unrecognized. The city appeared different during this period. Streets that once seemed energetic now felt indifferent. Passers-by moved past without notice. Construction sites, once symbols of progress, became reminders of exclusion. Tesla observed how quickly society forgot contributors when utility disappeared. This observation deepened his understanding of industrial culture. Despite hardship, Tesla's inner life remained structured. He continued to refine his alternating current system mentally. He rehearsed explanations repeatedly, anticipating objections. He adjusted parameters, visualized applications, and prepared for opportunities that might not come. This persistence prevented despair. He did not romanticize suffering. He endured it as condition. Eventually, opportunity emerged unexpectedly. While working on a street excavation, Tesla encountered individuals willing to listen. His explanation of alternating current intrigued them. Unlike previous audiences, they lacked entrenched investment in existing systems. They saw potential rather than threat. These conversations led to modest financial support and the establishment of a small laboratory. The laboratory was modest, barely more than a workspace with basic equipment. Yet for Tesla, it represented freedom. He could test ideas physically for the first time without institutional constraint. He worked methodically, translating mental models into tangible machines. Results matched expectations. Motors functioned smoothly. Efficiency exceeded direct current systems. Distance transmission proved feasible. Daily life stabilized slightly. Tesla secured better housing, though still modest. He resumed regular meals. Sleep improved marginally. He maintained routines. Walking remained essential. He continued to avoid social distractions. His focus narrowed toward development and demonstration. The broader electrical industry, meanwhile, intensified competition. Companies vied for contracts, public favor, and municipal support. Electricity remained novel and unsettling to many. Accidents occurred. Public fear grew. Press coverage amplified both promise and danger. In this environment, Tesla's work gained relevance and risk simultaneously. Partnerships formed cautiously. Tesla aligned with individuals who valued innovation and possessed financial resources. These alliances were pragmatic rather than personal. Contracts were negotiated carefully. Tesla learned from earlier misunderstandings. He insisted on written agreements. He accepted compromise on terms to ensure progress. Under Edison's shadow, Tesla had learned crucial lessons. He understood the power of reputation. He understood the necessity of demonstration. He understood the limits of verbal assurance. These lessons did not embitter him. They sharpened him. The period under Edison's influence ended not with confrontation but with divergence. Two paths separated. Edison continued refining direct current systems, expanding infrastructure, consolidating control. Tesla pursued alternating current, emphasizing efficiency, scalability, and theoretical coherence. Their paths would intersect publicly in years to come, but their working relationship was complete. This phase of Tesla's life revealed the cost of vision within industrial systems resistant to change. It tested his resilience, clarified his priorities, and forced him to confront the realities of capital and labor. He emerged leaner, more cautious, and more determined. The shadow under which he had worked did not diminish him, it outlined him. Against it, his ideas gained contrast. He moved forward not as subordinate or apprentice, but as independent inventor prepared to challenge the foundations of an industry. The struggle ahead would be public, complex, and often misunderstood. But Tesla had already endured private hardship. He was prepared to continue, poverty and persistence. Tesla's separation from Edison Machine Works did not lead immediately to independence. Instead, it exposed him to the most unforgiving side of industrial America. New York rewarded momentum, not potential. Once outside a major company, an engineer without capital or factory backing was invisible. Ideas alone did not pay rent. Precision and elegance did not guarantee attention. Tesla discovered quickly that invention, without sponsorship, was simply theory. The weeks following his departure were marked by instability. He moved frequently, choosing rooms based on affordability rather than comfort. These rooms were often narrow, poorly lit, and shared walls thin enough to transmit every sound. He adapted by minimizing possessions: a bed, a chair, a small table, papers carefully stacked, always protected from moisture. He kept his surroundings orderly even when circumstances deteriorated. Disorder, he believed, weakened resolve. Money became the central constraint. Meals were reduced to necessity: bread, simple soups, inexpensive fruit when available. He avoided indulgence, not as discipline now, but survival. Clothing wore thin, shoes deteriorated. He repaired what he could himself, stitching and reinforcing rather than replacing. Appearances mattered less during this period. Function mattered entirely. Employment opportunities narrowed quickly. Engineering firms were reluctant to hire someone associated with conflict, even quiet conflict, with a dominant figure like Edison. Tesla's name carried ability, but also uncertainty. He was perceived as brilliant but impractical, theoretical rather than reliable. These perceptions, once formed, were difficult to reverse. With few alternatives, Tesla accepted manual labor. He worked on street crews digging trenches for new electrical conduits. The work was exhausting and repetitive. Days were spent lifting soil, hauling debris, standing in damp trenches. The pace was relentless, governed by foremen and schedules indifferent to individual capacity. Tesla endured without complaint. Physical fatigue was preferable to mental stagnation. The contrast between his inner life and outer labor was stark. While his body performed simple tasks, his mind continued complex work. He used repetition to think. Each shovel of earth accompanied a calculation, a visualization, a refinement. He rehearsed explanations silently, preparing for conversations that might never occur. He treated these hours not as lost time, but as enforced concentration. Social interactions during this period were minimal. Fellow labourers worked alongside him without curiosity. He did not share his background or ideas. Conversation was brief and practical. Tesla did not seek sympathy. He preferred anonymity. It allowed him to conserve energy and avoid distraction. At night, exhaustion competed with mental activity. Sleep was shallow, sensitivity to noise intensified. He adjusted by sleeping in short intervals. He avoided crowded boarding houses when possible, choosing isolation even at higher cost. These decisions reflected long-standing habits rather than luxury. Control over environment preserved clarity. Despite hardship, Tesla continued to believe in the inevitability of his work. Alternating current systems remained clear in his mind. He saw their advantages not as speculation, but as certainty. He understood that adoption depended not on correctness alone, but on timing and persuasion. The challenge was not invention, it was translation, converting insight into something others could trust. Opportunity returned through chance rather than planning. While working on a trench, Tesla explained his ideas to a supervisor who showed unexpected interest. The explanation was not technical. Tesla described outcomes rather than mechanisms: long-distance transmission, reduced infrastructure, efficiency. These practical benefits resonated. The supervisor introduced Tesla to acquaintances with modest financial means but curiosity. These introductions led to meetings in rented offices and cafes. Tesla presented carefully, avoiding abstraction. He demonstrated with sketches and simple models. He spoke calmly, without exaggeration. He did not promise immediate profit. He emphasized durability and scalability. This honesty appealed to a small group willing to invest cautiously. With their support, Tesla established a modest laboratory. It was sparsely equipped: basic tools, limited materials, little insulation from noise, yet it was sufficient. Tesla worked methodically, translating mental designs into physical form. Motors were constructed carefully, components balanced precisely. Tests were conducted patiently. Failures were analyzed without frustration. Daily routine stabilized again. Tesla resumed predictable meals. He walked regularly. He slept slightly longer. These changes improved health marginally. Sensitivities remained, but were manageable. He avoided unnecessary exposure to noise and light. He worked primarily during hours when the building was quiet. Progress was steady rather than dramatic. Each successful test reinforced confidence. Alternating current motors functioned smoothly. without excessive heat or vibration. Transmission over distance confirmed expectations. These results were documented carefully. Tesla understood that demonstration mattered as much as theory. Word spread gradually. Engineers visited. Investors listened. Skepticism remained strong. Direct current systems dominated infrastructure. Companies had invested heavily. Public fear of high-voltage alternating current persisted. Tesla addressed these concerns factually, without dismissiveness. He explained safety measures, system design, and comparative risk. His calm manner contrasted with sensationalized press coverage. Financial strain eased but did not disappear. Funding was limited. Tesla spent cautiously, prioritizing materials and tools. He did not draw excessive personal income. Comfort remained secondary. Purpose remained primary. This period reshaped Tesla's understanding of persistence. He learned that endurance was not passive. It required active maintenance of belief under pressure. It required adaptation without surrender. He refined not only machines, but his approach to people, institutions, and timing. Poverty did not embitter him. It clarified him. It removed illusion. It demonstrated which habits were essential and which were optional. He discovered that his routines, walking, order, restraint, were not luxuries. They were supports. The broader city continued its expansion. Electrical demand increased. Competing companies multiplied. The industry prepared for confrontation between systems. Tesla recognized that his work would soon enter a larger conflict not of personalities, but of infrastructure and capital. For now, he focused on preparation. Each successful test, each improved design, each refined explanation strengthened his position. He understood that when the moment arrived, hesitation would cost opportunity. Persistence required readiness. This phase of Tesla's life lacked recognition. There were no public demonstrations, no headlines. Yet it was foundational. It transformed theory into practice under constraint. It tested resolve under deprivation. It confirmed that his ideas could survive not only intellectual scrutiny, but material scarcity. Tesla emerged from this period leaner, disciplined, and quietly confident. Poverty had not defeated him. It had narrowed his focus. He was no longer experimenting to prove possibility. He was preparing to prove necessity, the alternating idea. By the time Tesla's work moved fully into a dedicated laboratory, the alternating current system was no longer an abstraction sustained by belief alone. It had become a set of machines, measurements, and repeatable outcomes. The room itself was modest, bare walls, limited light, a workbench worn quickly by use, but within it, Tesla imposed the same order he carried everywhere. Tools were arranged precisely. Components were labelled and stored. Notes were written carefully, dated, and preserved. He treated the space not as workshop alone, but as extension of thought. Daily life regained a rhythm, shaped by intention rather than survival. Tesla woke early, ate lightly, and began work before the city fully stirred. He preferred the quiet hours. Noise interfered with concentration, and concentration remained his most valuable resource. He worked for long stretches without interruption, pausing only to walk briefly or eat. These pauses were not leisure. They were part of the process, allowing problems to settle and solutions to surface. The alternating current idea, as Tesla understood it, was simple in principle and complex in application. Electricity did not need to flow in a single direction to perform work. By reversing direction rapidly, current could travel farther with less loss, allow voltage transformation, and reduce the need for frequent power stations. These advantages were not theoretical curiosities. They addressed the central limitations of existing systems. Tesla approached development systematically. Motors were built and tested incrementally. He adjusted frequencies, voltages, and configurations with careful attention. He observed vibration, heat, efficiency, and wear. Failures were expected. He recorded them without frustration. Each failure refined understanding. Successes were measured conservatively. Tesla avoided exaggeration, even privately. Overconfidence, he believed, weakened judgment. The broader electrical industry continued to expand rapidly. Cities demanded lighting, transportation, and industrial power. Competition intensified. Companies invested heavily in direct current infrastructure, reinforcing commitment to existing systems. Tesla understood that technological superiority alone would not secure adoption. Systems survive when they align with economic incentives and public confidence. Public perception of electricity remained mixed. It fascinated and frightened simultaneously. Accidents involving exposed wires and equipment fed anxiety. Newspapers sensationalized incidents. Electricity was new enough to feel unnatural to many. Tesla considered this carefully. Any system he proposed would need to address not only technical efficiency, but perceived safety. Investors who supported Tesla remained cautious. They recognized potential but feared backlash. Demonstrations were planned carefully. Tesla presented his work calmly, emphasizing reliability rather than spectacle. He avoided dramatic claims. He believed that understated confidence built trust more effectively than bold promises. Within the laboratory, Tesla continued refining the polyphase motor. This design allowed multiple alternating currents, offset in phase, to produce smooth rotational force. The result was efficient, stable motion, without the need for complex mechanical commutators. This simplicity reduced wear and increased durability. Tesla recognized that these features mattered as much as performance. Systems adopted widely must tolerate misuse, variation, and imperfect maintenance. Daily routine remained strict. Tesla avoided social distractions entirely during periods of intense work. He declined invitations politely. He limited correspondence. He slept little, but regularly. He walked at set times, often repeating routes. These habits maintained equilibrium. Without them, sensory overload and fatigue intensified. Health remained delicate. Prolonged exposure to noise or bright light triggered discomfort. Tesla responded by controlling environment where possible. He worked behind closed doors. He used indirect lighting. He scheduled demonstrations during quieter hours. These adjustments allowed sustained productivity. As prototypes improved, Tesla began preparing for broader exposure. He understood that patents were essential. Intellectual property provided leverage in negotiations with companies and investors. He documented designs carefully, ensuring clarity and completeness. This process required translation of mental images into standardized language, a task Tesla approached with precision. Patent applications were filed. Legal processes moved slowly. Tesla waited patiently, continuing development rather than fixating on outcomes beyond his control. He understood that timing mattered. Premature disclosure risked imitation. Delayed disclosure risked irrelevance. Balancing these factors required judgment beyond engineering. Word of Tesla's work began circulating more widely among engineers. Some visited out of curiosity. Reactions varied. Skeptics questioned practicality. Others recognized elegance. A few saw strategic advantage. Tesla engaged respectfully with all. He did not argue aggressively. He explained principles, demonstrated results, and allowed evidence to speak. The alternating idea matured not as single breakthrough but as integrated system. Motors, transformers, generators, and transmission lines formed a coherent whole. Tesla emphasized interoperability. Components should work together seamlessly. This systems perspective distinguished his work from incremental modifications common elsewhere. Meanwhile, economic pressures mounted. Investors sought clearer timelines. They wanted demonstrations that could attract contracts. Tesla understood their position. He agreed to public exhibitions cautiously, insisting on conditions that preserved safety and accuracy. Preparation for these exhibitions was meticulous. Equipment was tested repeatedly. Tesla anticipated failure points and reinforced them. He rehearsed explanations internally, refining language to be accessible without oversimplification. He believed clarity was responsibility, not concession. The first demonstrations were controlled and measured. Motors ran smoothly, lights illuminated without excessive wiring. Observers noted efficiency and stability. Reactions ranged from curiosity to concern. Alternating current's higher voltages provoked fear. Tesla addressed this by demonstrating control, showing how voltage could be transformed safely, how systems could be insulated and regulated. Press coverage remained uneven. Some articles praised innovation, others emphasized danger. Tesla read selectively, focusing on factual content rather than tone. He avoided responding publicly to sensationalism. He believed that consistency over time would correct exaggeration. Within the laboratory, work continued unabated. Tesla refined designs further, preparing for scale. Scaling required anticipating manufacturing constraints. Materials had to be available. Designs had to tolerate variation. Tesla adjusted accordingly, sometimes compromising ideal specifications to accommodate reality. Daily life during this period was disciplined but not joyless. Tesla derived satisfaction from order and progress. He took pleasure in long walks, observing the city quietly. He noticed how electricity altered routines, shops open later, factories running longer, streets brighter. These observations reinforced the significance of his work. It was not abstract. It reshaped daily experience. The alternating idea now stood at the edge of broader conflict. Direct current proponents defended existing investments. They questioned safety, reliability, and feasibility. Tesla anticipated this resistance. He prepared responses grounded in data, not rhetoric. He believed that technical truth demonstrated consistently would prevail. Yet he also recognized that truth alone rarely decides outcomes. Power structures, capital flows, and public sentiment exert influence. Tesla did not enjoy these dynamics, but he studied them. He adjusted his approach, aligning demonstrations with moments of opportunity. This phase of Tesla's life marked transition from preparation to confrontation. The alternating current system was ready to be tested not only technically, but socially. The idea that had formed quietly during walks and solitude now demanded public evaluation. Tesla remained calm. He trusted the work. He trusted the process that had shaped it. Discipline, patience, persistence. He did not seek victory over individuals. He sought adoption of a system he believed better served society. As demonstrations increased and interest grew, Tesla understood that his role would shift again. He would move from inventor to advocate, from isolation to visibility. This transition carried risks. Visibility invited scrutiny. Scrutiny invited distortion. Yet he accepted this inevitability, preparing as he always had, not through spectacle, but through careful readiness. The alternating idea was no longer his alone. It had entered the world, subject to forces beyond his control. His task now was to guide it through that world with as much clarity and restraint as possible. War of currents. By the time the debate over electrical systems moved into public view, it had already hardened behind closed doors. What later generations would call the war of currents was not a single conflict, but a convergence of pressures, financial, political, technological, and psychological. Companies had invested enormous sums in direct current infrastructure. Engineers had built careers around it. Municipal officials had approved it. To question the system now was to question judgment, competence, and authority. Tesla entered this environment with limited interest in confrontation. He preferred demonstration to argument. Yet the scale of resistance made avoidance impossible. Alternating current challenged not only a technology, but an entire industrial arrangement. It threatened sunk costs and reputations. That threat produced anxiety, and anxiety demanded response. Public understanding of electricity remained incomplete. For most people, it was invisible and mysterious. They experienced its effects light, motion, communication without understanding mechanisms. This made public opinion vulnerable to suggestion. Newspapers amplified fear. Electrical accidents, while relatively rare, were reported with emphasis. High voltage became synonymous with danger. Alternating current, which often operated at higher voltages for transmission, was portrayed as inherently lethal. Tesla watched this shift with concern. He understood that technical nuance did not translate easily into public reassurance. Voltage, current, and frequency were abstract concepts. Sensation replaced explanation. The challenge was not only to prove that alternating current worked, but to persuade ordinary people that it could be trusted. Companies defending direct current systems engaged in public relations campaigns that framed the issue as moral as much as technical. Alternating current was depicted as reckless, uncontrolled, and unsafe. Demonstrations were staged to emphasize danger. Animals were electrocuted publicly to illustrate lethality. These events disturbed Tesla deeply. He believed they misrepresented both the science and the responsibility of engineers. Despite discomfort, Tesla did not respond with outrage. He responded with method. He organized demonstrations that emphasized control rather than force. He showed how voltage could be transformed safely. He demonstrated insulation, grounding, and regulation. He explained that danger depended on application, not system type. His tone remained measured, factual, and calm. Public demonstrations were carefully planned. Tesla tested equipment repeatedly before exhibitions. He accounted for environmental factors, humidity, temperature, interference. He anticipated failure points and addressed them in advance. This preparation reduced risk and reinforced credibility. Observers noted not only the performance of machines, but Tesla's demeanor. He spoke without exaggeration. He did not mock opponents. He presented information and allowed audiences to draw conclusions. Daily life during this period grew more demanding. Travel increased. Meetings multiplied. Tesla spent long hours explaining concepts to audiences with varying levels of understanding. He adapted language accordingly, simplifying without distorting. This work drained him. Sensory overload intensified. Noise, crowds, and irregular schedules taxed his endurance. To cope, Tesla reinforced routines wherever possible. He maintained strict sleep patterns when not traveling. He continued walking, often late at night after events. He ate lightly, avoiding heavy meals that interfered with concentration. He limited social interaction outside professional necessity. These habits were essential rather than optional. Financial considerations complicated matters further. While interest in alternating current grew, funding remained cautious. Investors wanted assurance that public resistance could be overcome. They wanted contracts, not concepts. Tesla understood their concerns. He provided data, case studies, and projections. He did not promise immediate dominance. He framed adoption as gradual and inevitable. Alliances shifted. Companies began to hedge, supporting both systems to reduce risk. Municipalities delayed decisions. Engineers debated privately. The industry entered a period of uncertainty. This uncertainty slowed progress but also created openings. Tesla recognized that clarity would emerge only through large-scale demonstration. Opportunities arose through major infrastructure projects. Power generation for factories, transportation, and public lighting required scalable solutions. Alternating current's advantages became difficult to ignore in these contexts. Distance transmission reduced the need for multiple power stations. Transformers allowed voltage adjustment to match application. These features translated into cost savings and reliability. Tesla participated in these discussions carefully. He provided technical guidance without insisting on control. He understood that widespread adoption required collaboration. He accepted that his role would be advisory rather than authoritative. This acceptance reflected realism rather than resignation. The press continued to influence public perception unevenly. Sensational headlines persisted alongside more balanced reporting. Tesla avoided engaging directly with hostile articles. He believed that responding amplified misinformation. Instead, He focused on consistent performance. Over time, successful installations spoke louder than rhetoric. Within the engineering community, attitudes shifted gradually. Skeptics observed results. Failures predicted by critics did not materialize. Safety measures proved effective. Reliability improved. Alternating current systems operated steadily under varied conditions. These outcomes accumulated credibility quietly. Tesla's health fluctuated. Extended periods of stress exacerbated sensitivities. He experienced episodes of nervous exhaustion. He responded by withdrawing temporarily from public engagement when possible. He rested in controlled environments. He resumed work only when equilibrium returned. This self-regulation allowed sustained participation without collapse. Despite pressures, Tesla remained focused on the system rather than the conflict. He did not frame events as victory or defeat. He framed them as transition. He understood that technological change rarely occurred without resistance. Resistance, to him, was indicator rather than obstacle. The human dimension of the conflict remained prominent. Workers worried about job security, engineers feared obsolescence, municipal officials feared public backlash. Tesla addressed these concerns when possible. He emphasized retraining rather than replacement. He explained that new systems required skilled labor. He framed change as evolution rather than rupture. Over time, contracts were awarded. Alternating current systems were installed in increasingly visible contexts. Performance met expectations. Public fear diminished slowly. Familiarity replaced novelty. Electricity became less mysterious as it became routine. Tesla observed these shifts with quiet satisfaction. He did not celebrate publicly. He continued refining designs, addressing inefficiencies, and improving safety. He understood that adoption did not end responsibility. Systems must be maintained, monitored, and improved continuously. The so-called war did not conclude with decisive announcement. It concluded through accumulation of evidence and experience. Direct current systems persisted in limited applications. Alternating current became dominant for transmission and distribution. This outcome reflected practicality rather than ideology. For Tesla, this period confirmed both the power and limits of invention. Ideas alone could not prevail. They required persistence, demonstration, and alignment with human systems. The conflict tested his patience and adaptability. It forced him into public roles he did not seek but accepted. Daily life gradually stabilized as the conflict eased. Travel decreased. Work returned to laboratory and advisory contexts. Tesla resumed more regular routines. Walking regained its central role. Sleep improved marginally. Sensory overload diminished as demands lessened. The broader impact of the conflict extended beyond technology. It reshaped industrial organization, public policy, and professional standards. Safety regulations improved. Public education increased. Electricity became subject to greater oversight. Tesla welcomed these developments. He believed that responsibility scaled with power. The war of currents had demanded more from Tesla than technical brilliance. It demanded resilience, communication, and restraint. He emerged not as victor in a duel, but as contributor to a system that transformed daily life. He understood that future challenges would differ. Success brought new expectations and pressures. Visibility invited myth-making and distortion. Yet he accepted these consequences as part of participation in society. As the conflict receded, Tesla turned attention toward new possibilities. Alternating current had proven itself. The question now was what could be built upon it. Energy, he believed, could move not only efficiently, but freely. Information could travel without wires. Systems could be unified rather than fragmented. These ideas remained distant, but the experience of conflict had prepared him. He had learned how systems resist change and how they adapt. He had learned the cost of persuasion and the value of patience, Westinghouse and relief. As the public controversy around electrical systems began to settle into quieter evaluation, Tesla's professional life shifted into a phase defined less by conflict and more by structure. The partnership that formed between Tesla and George Westinghouse was not built on personal affinity but on complementary needs. Westinghouse was an industrialist with experience, capital, and a willingness to challenge established systems if evidence supported change. Tesla possessed the system itself, fully formed, tested, and increasingly validated by practice. Their alignment was pragmatic and cautious, shaped by the realities of industry rather than enthusiasm. Westinghouse Electric operated differently from Edison's enterprises. While still driven by profit and competition, it allowed greater room for technical argument and long-term planning. Engineers were encouraged to propose alternatives, provided they could demonstrate feasibility. Tesla found this environment more tolerable, though not entirely comfortable. He remained wary of promises, having learned the cost of misunderstanding expectations. Contracts between Tesla and Westinghouse were negotiated carefully. Tesla assigned patent rights in exchange for financial support, royalties, and a degree of independence. These arrangements provided immediate relief, debt diminished, housing stabilized. For the first time in years, Tesla could work without constant anxiety over survival. This relief did not produce indulgence. It produced focus. Daily life adjusted subtly but meaningfully. Tesla moved into better accommodations, though still modest by contemporary standards. Rooms were cleaner, quieter, and more private. He maintained his routines, early rising, light meals, long walks, but the urgency behind them softened. He could pause without fear that pause would lead to collapse. This stability improved health marginally. Sensitivities persisted, but episodes of exhaustion became less frequent. Work under Westinghouse's support involved collaboration rather than isolation. Tesla consulted with engineers adapting alternating current systems for manufacturing and deployment. These engineers brought practical concerns, material availability, manufacturing tolerances, maintenance requirements. Tesla listened carefully. He adjusted designs where necessary, compromising not principles but implementation. This flexibility marked growth. He had learned that ideal systems must survive imperfect conditions. The relationship with Westinghouse was professional and restrained. Tesla did not socialize extensively. Meetings were focused, efficient, and factual. Westinghouse valued Tesla's clarity and integrity. He did not require theatrical demonstration. He required reliability. Tesla delivered documentation, test results, and reasoned projections. Trust developed slowly but steadily. The electrical industry at large continued consolidating. Companies merged or failed. Municipal contracts grew larger and more complex. Regulatory frameworks began emerging, addressing safety and standardization. Tesla observed these developments with interest. Standardization, he believed, could either stifle innovation or enable it, depending on implementation. He advocated for standards that preserved flexibility. One of the most significant outcomes of this period was the Chicago World's Columbian Exposition of 1893. While not the focus of Tesla's daily efforts initially, it loomed as a major opportunity. The exposition required massive electrical infrastructure to illuminate exhibits and power displays. Competing systems vied for selection. The decision carried symbolic weight. Success would demonstrate not only technical capability, but public trust. Preparation for the exposition involved intense coordination. Westinghouse Electric committed resources. Engineers worked under tight deadlines. Tesla provided guidance, ensuring systems operated reliably under scale. He did not manage logistics directly. His role remained conceptual and advisory. He focused on ensuring that the underlying principles were applied correctly. As the exposition approached, Tesla's workload increased. He reviewed designs, corrected misunderstandings, and resolved technical disputes. Travel increased modestly. Meetings multiplied. Despite pressure, Tesla maintained composure. He trusted the system. Years of preparation had built confidence not rooted in optimism, but in evidence. The exposition itself transformed public perception of electricity. Vast spaces illuminated uniformly, reliably, and safely challenged lingering fears. Alternating current-powered exhibits smoothly. Visitors experienced electricity not as threat, but as environment. Tesla observed these reactions quietly. He did not seek attention. He recognized the significance without dramatizing it. Financial relief deepened after the exposition's success. Royalties increased. Westinghouse's position strengthened. Tesla's immediate future appeared secure. This security allowed him to reduce involvement in administrative matters. He returned focus to exploration. New ideas resurfaced: wireless transmission, high-frequency currents, energy transfer without conductors. Daily routine adjusted again. Tesla spent more time in controlled laboratory settings, experimenting with phenomena beyond immediate commercial application. He explored resonance, oscillation, and electromagnetic effects at frequencies previously untested. These experiments were conducted methodically. He documented results carefully, aware that novelty attracted attention but required validation. Health considerations remained constant. Extended experimentation exacerbated sensitivities. Tesla responded by scheduling rest deliberately. He limited exposure to crowds. He worked in environments where sound and light could be controlled. These accommodations allowed sustained inquiry without severe consequence. The relationship with Westinghouse evolved as industry pressures mounted. Financial strains within Westinghouse Electric emerged due to rapid expansion and market competition. Royalty obligations became burdensome. Negotiations followed. Tesla faced a decision that tested his priorities. He could insist on contractual rights or accommodate the company's survival. Tesla chose accommodation. He relinquished future royalties in exchange for immediate stability for the company. This decision reflected not naivety, but calculation. He believed that preserving the system's adoption mattered more than personal wealth. He did not anticipate future regret. He accepted the trade-off calmly. This choice altered Tesla's financial trajectory permanently. It limited long-term income significantly, yet at the time, it resolved immediate pressures and preserved the infrastructure supporting his work. Tesla did not frame this as sacrifice. He framed it as alignment with purpose. Public recognition increased gradually. Tesla received invitations to speak, write, and consult. He accepted selectively. He preferred technical audiences. He avoided celebrity. Press coverage sometimes exaggerated his claims or portrayed him as eccentric. Tesla tolerated this with indifference. He believed that reputation was secondary to outcome. Social life remained minimal. Tesla did not pursue romantic relationships. He maintained polite acquaintances but few confidants. His emotional life remained inward. He expressed attachment primarily through care for animals, particularly pigeons encountered during walks. This affection reflected consistency rather than escape. He valued order, routine, and quiet connection. The broader society continued adapting to electrical infrastructure. Streets brightened. Factories extended hours. Transportation systems electrified. Tesla observed these changes as confirmation rather than triumph. He understood that technology's impact unfolded gradually, reshaping habits and expectations over decades. Work continued. Experiments grew more ambitious. Tesla explored higher voltages, wireless effects, and energy transmission concepts that extended beyond immediate industrial application. These explorations were grounded in earlier success. Without the alternating current system's validation, such work might have been dismissed outright. Now, it commanded cautious interest. The period of relief associated with Westinghouse did not produce comfort so much as stability. Stability allowed direction. Tesla's life during this phase was defined by measured progress rather than struggle. He remained disciplined, restrained, and focused. Yet beneath this stability lay new tension. Success altered expectations. Investors, journalists, and institutions projected futures onto Tesla's work. They anticipated miracles. Tesla did not encourage these projections, but he did not fully counter them either. He believed that ideas should be explored fully, even if outcomes remained uncertain. This tension would shape the next phase of his life. Relief did not end challenge, it changed its form. The immediate threat of poverty receded, replaced by the subtler pressure of expectation. Tesla approached this transition as he approached all others methodically, inwardly, and without spectacle. The partnership with Westinghouse provided more than financial respite. It provided context. It demonstrated that systems could be adopted at scale when evidence aligned with opportunity. It also revealed the fragility of such alignment. Markets shifted, companies strained, decisions carried long-term consequences. Tesla emerged from this period more cautious, but not less ambitious. He had seen his ideas reshape infrastructure. He believed greater transformations remained possible. The question was not whether energy could be harnessed more effectively. The question was how far responsibility extended once power became ubiquitous. As he turned increasingly toward experimental frontiers, Tesla carried with him the lessons of collaboration, compromise, and restraint. Relief had created space for vision, but it had also clarified limits. The future would test both Chicago and recognition. The Chicago World's Columbian Exposition did not announce itself to Tesla as a personal milestone. It arrived as obligation, scale, and test. Planning had begun years in advance, driven by national ambition rather than individual invention. The fair was intended to mark 4 centuries since Columbus's arrival in the Americas, but its deeper purpose was demonstration. America wished to present itself as modern, capable, and orderly, an industrial nation equal to any in Europe. Electricity became the medium through which that claim would be made visible. Chicago itself was still recovering from the Great Fire of 1871. The city had rebuilt quickly, decisively, with steel and ambition. Streets were laid out with purpose. New buildings rose higher than before. Industry and commerce expanded side by side. The fairgrounds, constructed along the lake, were designed to impose coherence, broad avenues, symmetrical buildings, white facades reflecting light deliberately. This order contrasted sharply with the dense, irregular city beyond. Visitors would move from chaos into clarity. Tesla arrived not as architect of the exposition, but as contributor to its invisible systems. Westinghouse Electric had secured the contract to supply alternating current power for the fair, defeating competitors through lower bids and demonstrated efficiency. The decision carried risk. Failure would be public and spectacular. Success would normalize alternating current for millions. Preparation demanded precision. The scale of the electrical system exceeded anything attempted before. Generators, transformers, miles of wiring, and thousands of lights had to function continuously. Redundancy was essential. Tesla reviewed plans carefully, identifying vulnerabilities. He corrected misconceptions quietly, without seeking credit. His concern was reliability. The fair would not forgive theoretical elegance without practical stability. During this period, Tesla's daily life was defined by travel and oversight. He moved between laboratories, offices, and the fairgrounds. He observed installation progress, tested equipment, and reviewed performance data. His presence reassured engineers but did not dominate proceedings. He avoided micromanagement. He trusted the system he had designed and the people adapting it. Living arrangements in Chicago were temporary and functional. Tesla chose quiet accommodations away from central crowds. He maintained routines where possible: early rising, light meals, walking when schedules allowed. The fair's pace disrupted these habits, but he adjusted carefully, aware that fatigue compromised judgment. As opening day approached, tension increased. Last-minute failures required rapid correction. Weather introduced uncertainty. Public anticipation grew. Newspapers speculated about safety. Electrical accidents elsewhere fed anxiety. Tesla addressed concerns factually when consulted, avoiding public spectacle. He believed that calm preparation was the most effective response. When the exposition opened, the effect was immediate and sustained. As dusk fell, buildings illuminated uniformly, without flicker or interruption. Pathways glowed. Water reflected light softly. Machinery operated smoothly. Visitors moved through spaces transformed by brightness, experiencing electricity not as novelty, but as environment. Tesla observed these scenes quietly. He did not stand before crowds or seek acknowledgement. He watched reactions, surprise, curiosity, reassurance. People lingered rather than hurried. Fear diminished as familiarity grew. Children played beneath lights without apprehension. Adults discussed possibility rather than danger. The fair continued for months. Electrical systems performed reliably despite weather changes, heavy usage, and constant operation. Failures were rare and addressed quickly. The absence of disaster mattered as much as the presence of spectacle. Reliability became its own demonstration. Recognition followed, though not immediately or uniformly. Engineers acknowledged success. Municipal officials took note. Investors recalibrated assumptions. Press coverage shifted tone, emphasizing achievement rather than risk. Alternating current ceased to appear radical. It became plausible. Tesla's role in this transition was recognized more clearly within professional circles than among the general public. He received invitations to lecture and write. Technical societies requested papers. These forums suited him better than popular media. He preferred audiences prepared to engage with complexity. His lectures during this period were controlled and precise. He avoided theatrical language. He explained principles methodically, using demonstrations to illustrate rather than impress. He emphasized measurement, repeatability, and safety. Audiences responded with respect rather than enthusiasm. This response suited him. Daily life stabilized further. Financial security improved. Tesla reduced administrative involvement, delegating where possible. He returned to laboratory work with renewed focus. The fair had proven adoption at scale. Now he turned attention toward extension. Public recognition introduced new pressures. Journalists sought interviews. Popular publications framed Tesla as visionary, sometimes exaggerating claims. He tolerated these portrayals without endorsement. He rarely corrected inaccuracies, unless they affected technical understanding. He believed that public narratives shifted independently of intent. Social expectations increased. Tesla declined most invitations unrelated to work. He maintained limited contact with acquaintances. He preferred solitude. Recognition did not alter his routines significantly. He continued walking daily, often late, observing the city quietly. The broader impact of the exposition extended beyond electricity. It reshaped expectations of public infrastructure. Cities began planning lighting, transportation, and communication systems with greater ambition. Standards emerged, safety regulations improved, professional engineering gained prestige. Tesla viewed these developments with cautious approval. Standardization, he believed, should enable rather than constrain. He advocated for flexibility within frameworks. He understood that progress required balance between order and innovation. Health remained a constant consideration. Extended public engagement taxed his nervous system. He scheduled rest deliberately. He limited exposure to crowds. He worked behind closed doors when possible. These strategies preserved equilibrium. As recognition grew, Tesla faced decisions about direction. He could continue refining existing systems, capitalizing on success. Or he could pursue ideas less immediately practical, but potentially transformative. He chose the latter. High-frequency currents, wireless transmission, and resonance experiments occupied his attention increasingly. These areas promised new applications but lacked immediate commercial pathways. Tesla accepted this uncertainty. He believed that foundational understanding preceded application. The success in Chicago provided credibility that protected this choice. Investors and institutions were more willing to tolerate exploration from someone associated with proven systems. Tesla used this latitude cautiously. He documented work carefully. He avoided extravagant claims publicly. Daily routine adapted to experimental demands. Laboratory hours extended. Measurements grew more complex. Safety precautions increased. Tesla remained meticulous. He did not rush results. He believed that premature demonstration damaged trust. Recognition altered Tesla's position within society, but not his orientation. He remained inward, disciplined, and restrained. He did not equate recognition with validation. Validation, to him, resided in consistency between idea and outcome. The exposition closed quietly, dismantled as planned. Buildings were removed, equipment redistributed. The physical manifestation of success disappeared. Its effects persisted. Tesla returned to New York with renewed clarity. The alternating current system had moved from proposal to infrastructure. The challenge now was not acceptance, but evolution. Electricity had entered daily life. Its future depended on decisions yet to be made. Recognition had opened doors. It had also created expectations. Tesla approached this phase without celebration. He saw recognition as temporary alignment between effort and attention. He did not rely on it. The lessons of Chicago were practical and enduring. Systems must perform under public scrutiny. Adoption depends on reliability more than rhetoric. Visibility magnifies consequence. Tesla absorbed these lessons without sentiment. Wireless dreams. With the success of alternating current established and its public controversy largely settled, Tesla entered a phase of work that felt, to him, both liberated and constrained. Liberated because the foundational struggle for acceptance had been resolved. Constrained because expectations now pressed inward from every direction. Industry wanted refinement, efficiency, and predictability. Investors wanted returns. Institutions wanted continuity. Tesla, however, felt drawn toward questions that lay beyond refinement, questions that required stepping away from what was already working. He did not experience this shift as rebellion. It felt more like completion. Alternating current had moved from idea to infrastructure. It no longer needed his constant attention. Others could improve it incrementally. Tesla believed his role was to explore what lay ahead, not to manage what already existed. The concept that increasingly occupied his mind was wireless transmission of energy, of information, of signals that could move without physical conductors. This idea did not arise suddenly. It had been present in fragments for years, emerging during earlier experiments with high-frequency currents and electromagnetic resonance. What changed now was Tesla's confidence that such exploration was justified by prior success. Daily life reorganized around experimentation. Tesla spent more time in laboratory environments where variables could be controlled precisely. He preferred working at night, when electrical interference was reduced and the city's noise softened. His sleep pattern adjusted accordingly. He slept in shorter intervals, often in the early morning hours, waking refreshed enough to resume work. Meals remained simple and scheduled. He ate lightly, avoiding foods that slowed concentration. He drank little. He maintained meticulous cleanliness in both personal habits and workspaces. These practices were not expressions of preference so much as necessity. Sensory sensitivity intensified during periods of intense experimentation. Order reduced strain. The laboratory itself grew more complex. Tesla introduced coils capable of generating extremely high voltages and frequencies. He studied resonance, how systems responded when driven at specific rates. He observed phenomena that challenged conventional understanding, including electrical discharges through air, luminous effects, and induced currents without direct contact. Tesla documented these experiments carefully. He recorded measurements, conditions, and outcomes. He distinguished between observation and interpretation, While public accounts sometimes portrayed him as visionary bordering on mystical, his private work remained disciplined. He did not accept results uncritically. He repeated experiments until patterns stabilized. Visitors to the laboratory increased. Engineers, journalists, and investors requested demonstrations. Tesla accepted selectively. He preferred audiences capable of understanding technical nuance. Demonstrations were controlled and restrained. He emphasized explanation over spectacle. When observers reacted with amazement, he redirected attention toward mechanism. Despite care, public narratives began drifting toward exaggeration. Newspapers described Tesla's work in dramatic terms, emphasizing potential over reality. Wireless energy was portrayed as imminent and limitless. Tesla did not fully correct these accounts. He believed that speculation was inevitable and that engaging with it directly risked further distortion. He focused instead on continuing work. Financial support during this period was uneven. Some investors were intrigued by wireless concepts. Others hesitated, noting the lack of immediate application. Tesla accepted this uncertainty. He reduced personal expenses further, ensuring that limited funds were directed toward equipment and experimentation. Health considerations became more prominent. High-voltage experiments demanded strict safety measures. Tesla was acutely aware of risk. He insulated equipment carefully, controlled discharge paths, and maintained distance where necessary. Despite precautions, the work taxed his nervous system. Episodes of fatigue and sensitivity increased. He responded by scheduling rest deliberately, sometimes withdrawing from work for days to recover equilibrium. Social life remained minimal. Tesla maintained polite contact with colleagues and acquaintances but did not cultivate intimacy. He preferred the company of routine. Walking remained central. He walked late at night, observing how the city responded to electricity, how lights altered movement, how extended hours changed labor patterns. These observations reinforced his belief that energy systems shaped society deeply. As wireless experiments progressed, Tesla's ideas expanded in scope. He envisioned a world in which energy and information could be transmitted globally, without reliance on wires. He imagined standardized frequencies enabling communication across distance. These ideas were ambitious, but not presented by Tesla as immediate reality. He framed them as possibilities grounded in physical principles. Professional skepticism increased. Some engineers questioned feasibility. Others acknowledged theoretical possibility but doubted practicality. Tesla listened without defensiveness. He understood their concerns. He did not argue forcefully. He believed that demonstration would ultimately resolve debate. Public lectures during this period reflected this balance. Tesla presented findings carefully, distinguishing between established results and speculative extension. He used precise language. He avoided claims that could not be supported by data. Despite this restraint, public imagination often outpaced his intent. Daily routine adapted further. Tesla limited lectures and public appearances to preserve energy. He spent longer uninterrupted periods in the laboratory. He worked methodically, focusing on measurement and replication. These habits sustained progress despite external noise. The broader scientific community remained divided. Some researchers explored similar phenomena independently. Communication between laboratories was slow and incomplete. Tesla followed developments where possible, reading technical journals and correspondence. He acknowledged parallel work without defensiveness. He believed that discovery was not proprietary, even if application required protection. Patents were pursued selectively. Tesla patented components and methods that could be defined clearly. More speculative ideas remained undocumented publicly. He believed premature patenting constrained exploration. This choice would later complicate recognition and ownership, but at the time it reflected his priorities. The city around him continued evolving. Electrical networks expanded, telephone systems improved, transportation electrified gradually. Wireless communication began emerging in limited forms. Tesla observed these developments with interest, noting alignment and divergence with his own work. Health fluctuations persisted. Sensory overload became more frequent. Tesla responded by simplifying environment further. He reduced social contact. He controlled lighting and sound rigorously. These adjustments allowed continued work, but reinforced isolation. Financial pressure resurfaced intermittently. Experiments consumed resources without generating immediate return. Tesla accepted this risk knowingly. He believed that foundational exploration required patience and tolerance for uncertainty. As the wireless dream matured, Tesla recognized that scale presented new challenges. Laboratory demonstrations differed from global application. Environmental factors varied. Control diminished. These challenges did not discourage him. They clarified scope. He began considering experiments beyond the city locations where interference was minimal and space abundant. This consideration marked the beginning of transition toward more remote work. Despite mounting challenges, Tesla remained composed. He did not frame difficulties as setbacks. He saw them as parameters. His inner life remained structured by routine and belief in process. The wireless dream did not replace earlier achievements. It extended them. Alternating current had proven that energy could be controlled and distributed efficiently. Wireless transmission asked whether control could transcend physical connection. Tesla pursued this question not as fantasy, but as disciplined inquiry. Public fascination continued growing. Tesla's image shifted from engineer to visionary in popular imagination. He tolerated this shift without embracing it. He remained focused on work. As preparations began for more ambitious experiments, Tesla understood that his life would change again. He would move farther from industry and closer to isolation. This prospect did not trouble him. He had always worked best at distance from noise. The wireless dream now demanded space, quiet, and patience. Tesla prepared accordingly, organizing resources, refining plans, and simplifying personal needs. He approached this transition without ceremony, as he had approached others. For him, the future remained not a promise, but a question, one that could be approached only through careful work, sustained attention, and willingness to proceed without guarantee. The wireless dream had taken shape. Its realization would require conditions beyond those he currently inhabited. Colorado silence. The decision to leave New York for Colorado Springs was not driven by impatience or escape. It emerged from practical necessity. Tesla's experiments with high-frequency currents and wireless transmission demanded conditions the city could not provide. Urban electrical interference disrupted measurements. Space was limited. Safety risks multiplied when high voltages met crowded streets. To proceed methodically, Tesla required distance, altitude, and quiet. Colorado Springs offered these conditions. It was remote enough to reduce interference, elevated enough to alter atmospheric behavior, and sparse enough to permit large-scale experimentation. The town itself was modest, shaped by rail connections, military presence, and the slow rhythms of frontier life. Compared to New York, it felt restrained and open. The air was dry, the horizon wide. Night arrived without competing glare. Tesla arrived in 1899 with equipment, notebooks, and a clear plan. He rented a large plot of land and constructed a laboratory specifically designed for his purposes. The building was functional rather than comfortable. Its most striking feature was a towering mast, topped with a metal sphere, connected to coils capable of producing immense electrical discharges. The structure was designed to interact with the atmosphere itself, not merely contained circuits. Daily life in Colorado Springs followed a different rhythm. Tesla worked almost exclusively at night. The reduced interference allowed clearer observation. He slept during the day, in short, controlled intervals. Meals were simple and repetitive, often taken alone. He avoided social engagement. The town's quiet suited him. He interacted politely when necessary, but maintained distance. The silence of Colorado was not absolute. Wind moved across open land. Distant trains passed. Thunderstorms rolled across plains with visible intensity. Tesla observed these natural forces closely. He believed that understanding atmospheric electricity was essential to wireless transmission. Storms provided data unavailable in laboratories. Experiments intensified quickly. Tesla generated electrical discharges of unprecedented scale, producing visible lightning within the laboratory. The sounds were sharp and forceful, echoing across the land. Locals watched from a distance, uneasy but curious. Tesla took precautions, grounding systems carefully and monitoring effects. Despite care, the work was inherently risky. He documented everything meticulously. Measurements were recorded, conditions noted, patterns analysed. Tesla distinguished carefully between observation and interpretation. While some phenomena suggested extraordinary possibilities, he resisted drawing conclusions prematurely. He repeated experiments, adjusted parameters, and verified consistency. The isolation allowed deep focus. Without the demands of industry, press, or investors, Tesla could pursue questions fully. He explored resonance between Earth and atmosphere, investigating whether the planet itself could function as conductor. These ideas were ambitious, but approached experimentally rather than rhetorically. Health during this period fluctuated. Extended night work strained his nervous system. Sensory sensitivity intensified. Tesla managed this through strict routine. He controlled exposure to light and sound. He limited visitors. He rested deliberately between experimental cycles. These measures allowed sustained work, though fatigue remained constant. The town observed Tesla with mixture of respect and uncertainty. His work was visible and audible. Electrical discharges lit the night sky. Power outages occurred when experiments overloaded local systems. Tesla compensated utilities promptly, but incidents reinforced his separation from ordinary life. He accepted this separation calmly. His focus remained inward. Financial considerations grew pressing. The experiments consumed resources rapidly. Equipment required maintenance and replacement. Funding was finite. Tesla remained unconcerned in the short term, believing that results would justify expense. He documented potential applications carefully, anticipating future explanation. Results were mixed. Some experiments confirmed theoretical expectations. Others produced ambiguous outcomes. Tesla recorded both without distinction. He did not frame ambiguous results as failure. He considered them parameters to be refined. The silence of Colorado extended beyond sound. It removed social feedback loops that shape behavior elsewhere. Tesla worked without external validation. This suited his temperament but also increased isolation. He maintained contact with a small circle through correspondence but otherwise lived almost entirely within his work. Walking remained part of routine, though adapted to environment. Tesla walked across open land, observing sky and terrain. These walks were not contemplative in a romantic sense. They were analytical. He observed how weather altered electrical behavior. He adjusted experiments accordingly. As months passed, Tesla became increasingly convinced that wireless transmission was physically possible. He observed energy propagating through ground and air in ways that suggested scalability. Yet he also recognized complexity. Control diminished with scale. Environmental variability introduced unpredictability. These challenges did not discourage him. They clarified requirements. The laboratory itself became extension of thought. Tesla adjusted layout to improve efficiency. He refined grounding systems. He modified coils. Each change was documented and evaluated. He avoided rushing conclusions despite internal excitement. Public knowledge of the work remained limited. Tesla did not invite press coverage. He avoided public statements. This discretion protected him from misrepresentation but also delayed recognition. He accepted this trade-off. Accuracy mattered more than attention. Health pressures increased toward the end of the Colorado period. Prolonged intensity without social moderation took toll. Tesla experienced heightened nervous exhaustion. He responded by reducing experimental frequency temporarily, allowing recovery. He did not abandon work. He adjusted pace. Financial realities eventually forced closure. Funding constraints and the need to present results to secure further support required return to more connected environments. Tesla dismantled the laboratory methodically, preserving equipment and notes. He left Colorado Springs without ceremony. The Colorado silence had served its purpose. It provided conditions for exploration impossible elsewhere. It allowed Tesla to test ideas at scale, to confront complexity directly, and to refine understanding of wireless phenomena. It also reinforced his inclination toward isolation and inward focus. Upon leaving, Tesla carried extensive documentation and sharpened conviction. He believed that wireless transmission remained viable, though challenging. He understood that translating Colorado experiments into practical systems would require new strategies, new funding, and new compromises. The silence did not end with departure. It remained internalized, a reference point for clarity. Tesla returned to more crowded environments with renewed awareness of what was lost and gained by proximity. He accepted both. This phase marked a turning inward that would not fully reverse. The experience of working beyond immediate oversight confirmed Tesla's preference for autonomy. It also distanced him further from industrial structures that demanded predictable returns. Colorado had offered space to ask questions without immediate answers. Tesla valued that freedom deeply. He carried its lessons forward, aware that future endeavors would require balancing isolation with engagement. The silence did not resolve the wireless dream. It refined it. It revealed both promise and difficulty. It tested endurance and method. It clarified the scale of ambition required. As Tesla prepared to re-enter a world of negotiation and expectation, he did so without regret. The work completed in Colorado had advanced understanding beyond speculation. It provided evidence, constraints, and direction. The next phase would test whether that understanding could survive contact with capital, institutions, and public imagination. Tesla approached that prospect without anxiety. He had already endured silence. He knew its value and its cost, towers and debt. When Tesla returned from Colorado Springs to the more crowded rhythms of the East Coast, he carried with him neither spectacle nor certainty. What he brought instead was documentation measurements, observations, calculations, and a sharpened belief that wireless transmission of energy and information was physically possible, though far more complex than public imagination suggested. He did not return with a finished system. He returned with a direction. The environment he re-entered had changed. The electrical industry was more consolidated. Corporate structures had grown more rigid. Investors were cautious, increasingly demanding clear pathways to profit. The appetite for risk that had once fueled rapid expansion was narrowing. Tesla, however, required precisely the opposite: patience, scale, and tolerance for uncertainty. The idea that would dominate this phase of his life took architectural form in a single project Wardenclyffe. The concept was ambitious but framed carefully. Tesla proposed a global wireless system capable of transmitting information and, eventually, power across great distances. The initial focus, he emphasized, was communication. This framing was strategic. Wireless telegraphy was gaining attention, and investors could imagine immediate applications. Wardenclyffe was to be built on Long Island, far enough from New York City to reduce interference but close enough to maintain access to industry and capital. Tesla selected the site deliberately. The land offered space for a large tower and supporting structures. It allowed for grounding into earth conducive to experimentation. It also symbolized connection between isolation and access. Securing funding required careful negotiation. Tesla engaged with J.P. Morgan, one of the most powerful financiers of the era. Morgan was pragmatic, reserved, and deeply concerned with control. He did not invest in ideas alone. He invested in systems he believed could dominate markets. Tesla presented Wardenclyffe not as fantasy, but as extension of proven work, an evolution of electrical and communication infrastructure. The agreement that emerged provided Tesla with funding sufficient to begin construction. It did not provide unlimited freedom. Expectations were implicit. Morgan anticipated a communication system that could compete commercially. Tesla accepted these terms without full concession. He believed that once infrastructure existed, expansion would be possible. Construction began methodically. The tower rose gradually, its skeletal form drawing curiosity from nearby residents. Supporting buildings housed equipment and workspace. Tesla oversaw details closely, ensuring that design aligned with experimental needs. He insisted on precision. The tower was not decorative. It was functional, engineered to interact with Earth and atmosphere as integral components of the system. Daily life during this period was dominated by oversight and coordination rather than experimentation alone. Tesla travelled frequently between New York and Wardenclyffe. He monitored progress, addressed construction challenges, and adjusted designs as realities imposed constraints. This work was less intellectually satisfying than laboratory exploration, but no less demanding. Routines adjusted under pressure, sleep became irregular, meals were taken as opportunity allowed. Tesla maintained cleanliness and order where possible, but the complexity of the project introduced unpredictability. He responded by tightening control over what he could notes, schedules, personal habits. Walking remained essential. He walked on the grounds, along nearby roads, using movement to think through technical and logistical problems. Financial pressure emerged quickly. Construction costs exceeded initial estimates. Materials, labor, and specialized equipment consumed funds faster than anticipated. Tesla attempted to manage expenses, but compromises risked undermining functionality. He chose quality over speed, believing that failure due to inadequacy would be irreparable. Communication with investors grew more strained. Morgan and others requested updates framed in terms of progress toward marketable outcomes. Tesla responded carefully, emphasizing milestones while avoiding overstatement. He did not fabricate results. He described challenges honestly, but selectively. He believed transparency necessary, but he also understood that excessive candor could erode confidence prematurely. The broader technological landscape complicated matters further. Wireless telegraphy advanced rapidly through other innovators. Systems that transmitted signals without wires were already being demonstrated, though often with limitations Tesla considered fundamental. Public attention shifted toward these developments. Tesla's work, slower and less visible, risked being overshadowed. Tesla did not dismiss these parallel efforts. He followed them attentively, recognizing both progress and shortcomings. He believed his approach addressed deeper issues of scalability and efficiency. However, explaining this distinction to investors and public proved difficult. Nuance did not translate easily into confidence. As months passed, funding tightened. Morgan grew cautious, particularly as Tesla hinted at broader ambitions beyond communication. The prospect of wireless power transmission unsettled investors. It threatened existing business models. Morgan, invested heavily in wired infrastructure, questioned the wisdom of undermining established systems. Tesla found himself in a delicate position. He could limit his vision to secure continued support, or he could maintain integrity at the risk of funding. He attempted compromise, emphasizing phased development. Yet trust eroded gradually. Requests for additional funding were delayed or declined. Construction slowed. Equipment procurement became uncertain. Tesla redirected personal resources to sustain progress, further straining finances. He reduced personal expenses to near minimum. Housing remained modest. Clothing wore thin again. Meals simplified. These adjustments were familiar, but the stakes were higher. The psychological toll increased. Tesla was no longer simply enduring poverty. He was watching a vision stall under financial constraint. This was not a failure of engineering, but of alignment between ambition and capital. Tesla understood this intellectually, but acceptance remained difficult. Health reflected this strain. Episodes of exhaustion intensified. Sensitivity to sound and light worsened. Tesla responded by isolating further, reducing social interaction to essential communication. He avoided public appearances. He focused narrowly on Wardenclyffe, believing that progress there justified sacrifice. Local reaction to the tower shifted over time. Initial curiosity faded into indifference or skepticism. The structure stood unfinished, a visible symbol of ambition without outcome. Tesla did not engage with speculation. He continued work quietly. Debt accumulated. Suppliers demanded payment. Credit tightened. Tesla negotiated extensions where possible. He leveraged reputation cautiously, avoiding commitments he could not fulfill. Pride did not prevent him from seeking accommodation, but he refused to misrepresent prospects. Eventually, construction ceased. The tower stood incomplete, functional in parts but never fully realized. Equipment remained installed, but experiments could not proceed at intended scale. Tesla continued theoretical work, refining ideas on paper, but practical validation stalled. The emotional impact of this period was complex. Tesla did not experience public humiliation. He withdrew before that could occur. Yet internally, the frustration was profound. Wardenclyffe represented not only a project, but a culmination of decades of thought. Its suspension marked a turning point. Daily life simplified further. Tesla reduced movement, spending more time alone. Walking remained, but shorter and less frequent. He preserved routine where possible, but energy waned. He continued to care for pigeons encountered during walks, a quiet consistency amid disruption. Despite setbacks, Tesla did not abandon belief in wireless transmission. He continued writing, refining explanations, and publishing selectively. He presented ideas cautiously, aware that credibility had been damaged by association with unfinished infrastructure. He focused on clarity rather than persuasion. The broader world moved on. Industry consolidated further. New technologies captured attention. Tesla's absence from active development reduced visibility. His earlier successes remained acknowledged, but increasingly historical. Wardenclyffe became a physical reminder of misalignment between vision and means. Tesla did not romanticize it. He recognized practical failures, underestimated costs, over-reliance on singular funding, insufficient adaptation to shifting markets. He accepted responsibility without self-reproach. Debt persisted. Tesla negotiated settlements where possible. He relied on occasional income from patents and consulting. These sources diminished over time. Financial insecurity returned, though less violently than earlier periods. He had learned endurance. This phase reshaped Tesla's relationship with ambition. He did not relinquish it. He refined it inwardly. He recognized that some ideas required not only invention but societal readiness. That readiness could not be forced. Wardenclyffe marked the end of Tesla's large-scale infrastructural endeavors. He would continue experimenting and thinking, but on a reduced scale. The era of towers and grand construction had passed. The debt associated with Wardenclyffe constrained his later life materially and psychologically. Yet it also clarified priorities. Without expectation of large funding, Tesla returned to exploration for its own sake. This shift brought both relief and marginalization. As the tower stood silent, Tesla moved forward quietly. He dismantled what could be salvaged, preserved notes, and released attachment to physical structure. Ideas, he believed, outlast buildings. The period of towers and debt concluded without resolution. There was no public reckoning, no dramatic collapse. There was only gradual withdrawal and acceptance. Tesla carried forward, not bitterness, but caution. He understood now that innovation at scale required alignment not only of physics, but of economics and power. That alignment had failed. What remained was the individual disciplined, isolated, and still attentive. The next phase of his life would unfold without grand projects, but not without purpose. He had entered a quieter period, shaped by limits rather than expansion. The tower would eventually be dismantled. Debt would remain. But the ideas explored there would continue circulating, detached from their incomplete monument. Tesla stepped into this next phase without announcement. He had endured loss before. He knew how to proceed quietly. The world moves on. After Wardenclyffe, Tesla's life entered a phase defined less by ambition than by adjustment. There was no sharp break, no formal ending. The tower's silence did not arrive with an announcement. It settled gradually, like a sound fading rather than stopping. Tesla continued to work, to think, to write, but the world around him began to reorganize itself without reference to his direction. The early years of the 20th century moved quickly. Industry accelerated. Corporations grew larger and more centralized. Research laboratories became institutional rather than individual. Teams replaced solitary inventors. Funding followed predictability, not vision. The pace of technological change increased, but the space for unbounded exploration narrowed. Tesla observed these shifts carefully. He did not resent them. He recognized them as structural. Innovation had become industrialized. Ideas were no longer expected to emerge fully formed from a single mind. They were to be generated incrementally, tested by committees, and approved by boards. This model favored reliability and scale. It left little room for speculative leaps. Tesla's habits adjusted accordingly. He reduced active experimentation, focusing instead on theoretical work and selective invention. He continued filing patents, though less frequently. These patents addressed specific mechanisms, turbines, control systems, mechanical refinements rather than comprehensive infrastructures. They were precise, contained, and often ahead of their practical application. Daily life simplified. Tesla lived primarily in hotels, choosing rooms that met his requirements for cleanliness, quiet, and order. He preferred predictability. Hotels provided routine without ownership. He could move easily if conditions changed. Staff interactions were formal and limited. He tipped generously when service was discreet. He valued invisibility. His daily schedule became highly structured. He rose at fixed times, ate light meals at specific hours, and walked each evening regardless of weather. These walks were not expressions of leisure. They were maintenance. Movement regulated thought. Repetition stabilized mood. Without these routines, Tesla experienced sensory overload and fatigue. The city around him continued to transform. Automobiles replaced horses gradually. Electric streetcars expanded. Telephones became more common. Buildings grew taller. Noise increased. Tesla responded by adjusting routes, choosing quieter streets, later hours. He adapted without complaint. Public perception of Tesla shifted subtly. He remained known, but increasingly as historical figure rather than active force. Newspapers referred to him as pioneer, inventor, visionary. These labels acknowledged past contributions while implying completion. Tesla did not correct this framing. He understood that public attention moved forward. Professional invitations declined gradually. Technical societies invited younger engineers. Research agendas favored incremental improvement. Tesla attended fewer meetings. When he did, he listened more than spoke. He observed how language had changed. Discussions emphasized optimization, efficiency, and management rather than principle. Financial circumstances tightened further. Without royalties from alternating current, income depended on consulting, lectures, and occasional patent sales. These sources were inconsistent. Tesla adjusted expenses accordingly. He reduced personal needs to minimum. He did not seek luxury. He sought continuity. Despite constraints, Tesla continued to think expansively. He wrote articles outlining future possibilities: automation, robotics, remote control, renewable energy. These writings were speculative but grounded. He framed them as extensions of known principles rather than predictions. Some ideas would later find realization. At the time, they were noted politely and set aside. Social life remained sparse. Tesla did not marry. He did not form domestic partnerships. His relationships were formal and transient. He preferred distance, emotional investment, complicated routine. He found consistency in animals, particularly pigeons. He fed them daily during walks, recognizing individuals and patterns. This activity provided quiet connection without demand. Health issues became more prominent. Sensitivity to sound and light intensified with age. Tesla managed this by controlling environment rigorously. He requested specific rooms. He limited exposure to crowds. He avoided sudden noise. These measures allowed functional independence longer than might otherwise have been possible. The world's focus shifted toward new figures and technologies. Radio gained prominence. Aviation emerged. Mass production transformed manufacturing. Tesla followed these developments attentively, reading journals and reports. He recognized connections between these innovations and his earlier work. He did not claim ownership. He observed patterns. Occasionally, Tesla attempted to re-enter public discourse, presenting ideas he believed critical. These efforts were received with mixed reactions. Some viewed him as visionary ahead of his time. Others dismissed him as outdated or impractical. Tesla did not respond defensively. He accepted that timing determined reception as much as content. Daily writing became more prominent. Tesla recorded thoughts, refined ideas, and organized notes. Writing provided structure. It allowed exploration without resource consumption. He revisited earlier work, correcting, clarifying, and extending where possible. This retrospective activity brought satisfaction without pressure. The hotel environment suited this phase. Rooms were quiet, service predictable, change manageable. Tesla moved between hotels occasionally, often due to financial necessity. Each move was executed methodically. He packed lightly, preserving essential papers and discarding excess. Possessions remained few. The city staff learned his habits. He preferred meals prepared a certain way. He requested specific table settings. He expected cleanliness. These preferences were accommodated quietly. Tesla valued discretion over familiarity. As years passed, Tesla's public appearances became rarer. When he did speak, his tone remained measured and factual. He avoided nostalgia. He discussed future possibilities rather than past achievements. Audiences listened with curiosity and uncertainty. He did not seek persuasion. The distance between Tesla and the mainstream of innovation widened. Research became institutional. Funding became corporate. Vision became segmented. Tesla remained individual, holistic, and speculative. This divergence was not personal. It was structural. Despite marginalization, Tesla did not withdraw entirely. He continued monitoring developments, adjusting his understanding. He corresponded selectively. He answered technical questions when asked. He maintained dignity and clarity. The world moved on, but not entirely away. Tesla's earlier work remained embedded in infrastructure. Alternating current-powered cities. Motors ran factories. These systems operated quietly, without reference to origin. Tesla observed this with acceptance. Impact did not require recognition. Financial strain returned intermittently. Tesla negotiated accommodations with hotel managers. He paid what he could, delayed when necessary. Pride did not prevent practicality. He avoided debt where possible. He reduced expenses further when required. Health continued to decline gradually. Energy diminished. Recovery required more time. Tesla adapted by reducing activity. He walked shorter distances. He worked fewer hours. He accepted these limits without complaint. The emotional tone of this period was subdued but stable. Tesla did not experience despair. He experienced narrowing. Options reduced. Focus tightened. He continued to find purpose in thought and observation. The world's indifference did not wound him deeply. He had long understood that societies absorb contributions without gratitude. He did not expect applause. He valued coherence. As decades turned, Tesla's name remained familiar but detached. Younger generations knew him as figure rather than presence. Myths began forming. Tesla did not encourage them. He did not actively dismantle them either. He remained private. This phase of his life lacked drama. It was defined by continuity rather than climax. He maintained routines. He preserved habits. He continued thinking. The world moved on, but Tesla did not stop. He adjusted scale, not direction. His ambitions shifted inward. Exploration continued within constraints of age and circumstance. What remained was a life shaped by discipline, isolation, and attention. Without towers or laboratories, Tesla sustained inquiry through thought. Without funding or acclaim, he preserved clarity through routine, habits of solitude. As Tesla moved deeper into the later decades of his life, solitude was no longer a condition imposed by circumstance. It had become a structure he relied upon. The absence of large projects and constant collaboration did not feel like loss so much as narrowing. His world reduced in scale, but it gained clarity. Within that clarity, habits became the primary means of stability. Tesla's days followed patterns that changed little from year to year. He rose at the same hour, often before dawn, when the city was quiet and interruptions unlikely. He preferred mornings for reading and writing, when his mind felt least crowded. Evenings were reserved for walking, a practice he had maintained since youth. These walks were not optional. They regulated his thinking, eased sensory strain, and provided continuity between days. He lived almost exclusively in hotels, not because of comfort, but because they offered predictability without attachment. Ownership demanded attention. Hotels allowed him to focus inward. He selected rooms carefully upper floors when possible, away from street noise, with windows that could be opened for fresh air. Cleanliness mattered. Disorder disrupted concentration. He requested specific arrangements repeatedly until staff understood his preferences. Meals followed strict rules. Tesla ate lightly and consistently. He avoided excess, not out of ascetic belief, but because heavy meals impaired mental clarity. He preferred simple foods prepared plainly. He ate alone, often at the same table, at the same time each day. Servers learned not to engage him in conversation. He valued efficiency over familiarity. These habits were often misinterpreted by observers as eccentricities. Tesla did not correct these interpretations. He had learned that explanation rarely improved understanding. His routines were not symbolic. They were practical responses to a nervous system that required careful management. Sensitivity to sound and light intensified with age. Sudden noises startled him. Bright lights caused discomfort. He responded by controlling exposure meticulously. He avoided crowded streets and noisy venues. He scheduled appointments during quieter hours. He adjusted walking routes to avoid traffic. These adaptations preserved independence longer than might otherwise have been possible. Social interaction diminished further. Tesla maintained polite contact with a small number of acquaintances, engineers, journalists, hotel staff, but did not cultivate close relationships. He did not experience loneliness in the conventional sense. Solitude, to him, was not absence. It was space. One consistent presence during his walks was pigeons. Tesla fed them daily, observing their patterns and behavior. He recognized individuals, noting injuries or changes. This attention was not sentimental. It was consistent with his general observation of systems living or mechanical. Pigeons responded to routine. They appeared at expected times. They required care without complication. This relationship suited him. Tesla's affection for animals was quiet and controlled. He did not keep pets. He did not anthropomorphize. He respected their autonomy. The pigeons represented continuity, not companionship in a human sense. They anchored his daily routine without imposing emotional demand. Writing occupied increasing portions of his day. Tesla wrote articles, notes, and reflections on future technologies. These writings were careful, measured, and speculative without exaggeration. He explored automation, energy efficiency, remote control, and global communication. Many ideas anticipated later developments, but Tesla presented them as possibilities, not predictions. He wrote with clarity, avoiding rhetorical flourish. His sentences were direct. He emphasized principle over promise. Editors sometimes altered tone for publication, amplifying claims or simplifying nuance. Tesla tolerated this reluctantly. He believed that accuracy mattered more than reception, but he also understood that he did not control interpretation. Financial pressures remained constant. Hotel bills accumulated. Income was irregular. Tesla managed these pressures through negotiation and restraint. He reduced expenses where possible. He accepted accommodations from hotel managers who respected his reputation. He paid what he could, when he could. Pride did not prevent practicality. Despite limited means, Tesla maintained personal standards. He dressed neatly, if not fashionably. He kept himself clean. He expected the same from his environment. These standards were expressions of discipline, not status. Order provided stability when external structures receded. Health issues progressed gradually. Energy declined. Recovery required more time. Tesla responded by reducing activity, not by surrendering routine. He shortened walks rather than eliminating them. He limited work hours but maintained daily writing. He accepted physical limits without resentment. The city continued to change around him. Automobiles increased, noise intensified, new buildings altered familiar routes. Tesla adjusted quietly, selecting alternative paths, altering schedules. He did not complain publicly. He believed adaptation was responsibility. Public perception of Tesla during this period shifted further toward myth. Articles portrayed him as forgotten genius or eccentric recluse. Tesla read selectively. He avoided responding to sensationalism. He believed that correcting myth often reinforced it. Silence, he thought, allowed exaggeration to exhaust itself. Occasionally, Tesla accepted interviews or delivered lectures. These appearances were controlled and brief. He spoke factually, avoiding self-reference. He emphasized ongoing curiosity rather than past accomplishment. Audiences listened with a mixture of respect and distance. Tesla did not attempt to bridge that distance. Professional engagement became increasingly advisory. Younger engineers sought his opinion on specific problems. Tesla responded when asked, offering insight without assertion. He did not insist on authority. He did not seek credit. He valued coherence over recognition. Habits extended to thinking itself. Tesla organized thoughts numerically, categorizing ideas and tasks. He maintained lists and schedules. He avoided multitasking. Focus remained singular. These cognitive habits reduced strain and preserved clarity. The absence of large projects did not equate to inactivity. Tesla remained intellectually engaged. He followed developments in science and engineering through journals and correspondence. He recognized advancements aligned with his earlier work. He did not claim precedence publicly. He observed with interest. Solitude also meant reduced exposure to disappointment. Without expectation of funding or adoption, Tesla could explore ideas freely within limits. This freedom was internal rather than material. It allowed contemplation without negotiation. The hotel room became a stable unit of existence. Within its walls, Tesla controlled light, sound, and order. He wrote, read, and rested. Outside, the city moved. Inside, routine held. As years passed, Tesla's habits grew more pronounced. He avoided unnecessary travel. He limited visitors. He adhered to schedules rigidly. These choices preserved energy and autonomy. Emotional expression remained minimal. Tesla did not articulate regret publicly. He did not dwell on missed opportunities. He accepted outcomes as products of timing and structure. This acceptance was not resignation. It was clarity. The solitude of this period did not isolate Tesla from meaning. Meaning resided in process observation, routine. thought. He valued continuity over expansion. Habits provided scaffolding for a life no longer supported by institutions or projects. They were not quirks. They were systems, refined through decades of necessity. As the world accelerated, Tesla slowed deliberately. He conserved attention. He preserved order. He remained present. Solitude, once a consequence of ambition, had become its companion. Within it, Tesla maintained coherence. Without it, his work would have dissolved into noise. This phase of his life lacked spectacle. It lacked recognition. It lacked resolution. Yet it sustained him. Fame without power. As Tesla moved into the final decades of his life, a strange inversion took hold. His name became more widely known even as his influence diminished. Fame arrived without authority, recognition without leverage. Newspapers mentioned him often, but rarely consulted him. Articles celebrated his early achievements while treating his present work as curiosity. Tesla observed this shift with detachment rather than bitterness. He had long understood that public attention followed novelty, not continuity. The image of Tesla that circulated during this period bore only partial resemblance to the man himself. He was described as brilliant, eccentric, solitary, prophetic. These descriptions were not entirely inaccurate, but they were incomplete. They emphasized spectacle over method, isolation over discipline. Tesla did not correct them. He had learned that identity in the public sphere was constructed independently of intent. Public appearances became occasional events rather than ongoing engagement. Tesla accepted invitations selectively, often declining without explanation. When he did appear, he presented himself formally and calmly. He avoided dramatization. He did not recount past struggles or claim injustice. He spoke about technical principles, future possibilities, and the responsibilities that accompanied technological power. Audiences listened with interest, but often filtered his words through preconceived narratives. The press favoured extremes. Tesla was portrayed either as visionary ahead of his time or as relic of a bygone era. Nuance did not survive headlines. Tesla read these accounts selectively. He was not offended by exaggeration, but he was aware of its consequences. It distanced him further from practical collaboration. Engineers hesitant to associate with myth preferred institutions and teams over individuals. Financial independence continued to erode. Without steady income from patents or large-scale projects, Tesla relied on modest payments from articles, lectures, and occasional consulting. These sources were unpredictable. He adjusted expenses accordingly. He negotiated hotel arrangements, delayed payments when necessary, and accepted concessions quietly. He did not appeal publicly for support. He believed that dependence compromised clarity. Despite limited means, Tesla maintained personal dignity. He dressed neatly. He kept his appearance controlled. He expected order in his surroundings. These standards were not expressions of status, but of self-respect. He believed that outward order reinforced inward discipline. Daily routines remained unchanged. He woke at fixed times, wrote in the mornings, walked in the evenings. These routines anchored him as external structures dissolved. They allowed continuity across years that otherwise blurred together. Without projects to measure progress, routine became metric. The city's response to Tesla was respectful but distant. Hotel staff recognized him as notable and treated him with discretion. Journalists sought interviews intermittently. Engineers acknowledged his contributions historically. Yet decision-making power resided elsewhere in corporate laboratories, government agencies, and academic institutions. Tesla was not invited into these structures. He did not seek entry aggressively. Technological development accelerated around him. Radio communication expanded. Power grids standardized. Mass production refined processes. Tesla followed these developments attentively, noting both alignment with his earlier ideas and divergence from his preferred approaches. He recognized that many concepts he had explored were now being implemented by others, adapted to institutional frameworks. This recognition did not provoke resentment. Tesla understood that ideas did not belong to individuals once released into society. He believed that contribution mattered more than attribution. Still, the gap between influence and acknowledgement grew. He accepted this as structural rather than personal. Occasionally, Tesla attempted to reassert relevance by presenting new concepts publicly. These presentations were measured and factual, but they struggled to gain traction. Audiences listened politely but skeptically. Without demonstrable prototypes or institutional backing, ideas were treated as speculative. Tesla did not exaggerate to compensate. He refused to promise outcomes he could not guarantee. Health continued to decline gradually. Energy levels fluctuated. Recovery required more time. Tesla adapted by reducing public engagement further. He conserved attention and strength. He prioritized writing and thinking over appearance. Writing became increasingly important. Tesla used it to articulate ideas that no longer had immediate pathways to realization. He wrote about automation, remote control, energy distribution, and the ethical implications of technology. These writings were thoughtful, cautious, and often prescient. They were read selectively, appreciated more in retrospect than at the time. Public fascination with Tesla persisted in a distorted form. He was celebrated in anniversary articles and retrospectives. His birthday became occasion for renewed attention. Tesla tolerated these moments with polite engagement. He did not attempt to reshape narrative. He answered questions succinctly and returned to routine. The contrast between public image and private reality grew sharper. Privately, Tesla lived simply, quietly, and with limited resources. Publicly, he was depicted as figure of grand ideas and dramatic potential. Tesla did not bridge this gap. He allowed it to exist. Professional isolation deepened. Without collaborators or teams, Tesla worked alone. He did not attempt to establish a school or train successors. He believed that understanding could not be transmitted easily without shared discipline. He preferred to influence indirectly through ideas rather than instruction. The emotional tone of this period remained restrained. Tesla did not express regret openly. He did not lament missed opportunities. He framed outcomes as results of timing and structure rather than failure. This framing allowed acceptance without resignation. The absence of power did not eliminate responsibility in Tesla's view. He continued to consider ethical implications of technology. He wrote about misuse, concentration of control, and unintended consequences. He believed that engineers bore responsibility beyond invention. These concerns were not always welcomed. They complicated narratives of progress. As fame without power became normal, Tesla adjusted expectations. He no longer anticipated funding or large-scale implementation. He focused on coherence, maintaining alignment between belief and behavior. He valued consistency over influence. Daily walks continued to provide contact with the world without engagement. Tesla observed changes in the city, new lighting, transportation, patterns of movement. He saw his earlier work embedded in these systems. This presence satisfied him more than public acknowledgement. Infrastructure did not require applause. Hotel life continued. Tesla moved occasionally, often due to financial necessity. Each move was executed methodically. He packed lightly, preserved essential papers, and discarded excess. Possessions remained minimal. Interactions with hotel staff were polite and consistent. They respected his routines. He appreciated discretion. These small, stable relationships replaced broader social networks. As years passed, Tesla's public appearances became rarer. When he did speak, his voice remained steady, his language precise. He avoided self-reference. He emphasized ideas rather than biography. Audiences listened with respect but distance. The tension between fame and power resolved quietly. Tesla accepted that his influence would be historical rather than immediate. He did not attempt to reclaim authority. He did not cultivate allies aggressively. He allowed relevance to recede. This acceptance did not diminish curiosity. Tesla continued thinking, observing, and writing. He followed developments in science and engineering with interest. He noted where systems succeeded and where they failed. He did not intervene unless asked. The world's acceleration contrasted with Tesla's deliberate pace. He slowed intentionally. He conserved energy. He prioritized clarity. Fame without power proved less burdensome than power without autonomy. Tesla preferred independence to authority. He accepted marginalization as cost of integrity. As this phase continued, the gap between public myth and private routine widened. Tesla remained unconcerned. He had long understood that meaning did not require alignment with perception. What remained was a life structured by habit, observation, and thought. Fame passed overhead like weather, noticeable, but not determining. Power resided elsewhere. Tesla did not pursue it. The final rooms. Tesla's final years unfolded within a shrinking geography. The wide horizons of Colorado, the scaffolding of towers, and the noise of laboratories were replaced by hotel corridors, elevators, and a single room arranged precisely to his needs. This contraction did not feel abrupt. It progressed gradually, almost imperceptibly, until routine itself became the boundary of daily life. He lived primarily at the Hotel New Yorker during this period, choosing it for its height, its relative quiet, and its proximity to familiar walking routes. The building was modern, orderly, and electrically sophisticated, an irony not lost on him. From his window, he could observe the city at a distance, its lights forming patterns rather than demands. He preferred rooms on higher floors, where street noise diminished and perspective widened. Daily habits remained intact, though their scale reduced. He rose at the same hour each morning, though mornings now came later than before. Writing occupied the early part of the day. His writing was careful and methodical notes, letters, technical reflections, and occasional articles. He no longer rushed. Time had lost urgency. What mattered was completion, not speed. Meals were simpler still. Tesla ate sparingly, favouring the same foods prepared in the same way. He avoided novelty, consistency, reduced strain. Hotel staff learned his preferences and accommodated them quietly. He valued discretion above all. Conversation was minimal and polite. Familiarity remained professional rather than personal. Walking continued, though distances shortened. Tesla still left the hotel daily, often in the late afternoon or evening. He followed predictable routes, feeding pigeons as he had for years. His pace slowed. He rested more frequently. Yet the walks remained essential. Without them, he felt disoriented. Movement connected days into continuity. Health declined steadily. Energy waned. Recovery took longer. Tesla responded by narrowing focus rather than withdrawing entirely. He reduced correspondence. He declined most invitations. He conserved strength for essential activity, writing, observation, routine. Sensory sensitivity increased markedly. Loud noises startled him. Bright light caused discomfort. He controlled his environment rigorously, keeping curtains drawn, lights dim, sounds minimal. These measures allowed independence longer than might otherwise have been possible. He did not complain about limitations. He adjusted to them. Financial circumstances were precarious. Hotel bills accumulated. Income was minimal. Tesla relied on reputation rather than resources, negotiating accommodations quietly. Management respected his history and treated him with patience. He paid what he could. He avoided debt when possible. He reduced expenses further, eliminating anything non-essential. Despite reduced means, Tesla maintained dignity. His clothing was clean and orderly. His appearance remained controlled. He believed that neglect signaled surrender, and he did not surrender. Order, even in decline, preserved self-respect. Writing during this period became more reflective, though not nostalgic. Tesla did not recount his life in memoir. He focused on ideas, future technologies, ethical concerns, theoretical clarifications. He wrote about automation, global communication, energy efficiency, and the dangers of unregulated power. These writings were careful, measured, and often prescient. Public attention flickered intermittently. Journalists occasionally sought interviews, especially around his birthday. Tesla accepted some, declining others. When he spoke, his tone remained factual. He avoided personal narrative. He did not dramatize decline or regret. He spoke about ideas rather than himself. The contrast between his public image and private reality grew sharper. Publicly, he was celebrated as a genius, a visionary, a man ahead of his time. Privately, he lived quietly, managing daily routines with effort. Tesla did not attempt to reconcile these perspectives. He accepted them as separate systems operating independently. Professional engagement was minimal. Engineers no longer sought his direct involvement. Research had moved into institutions. Tesla observed this without bitterness. He understood that innovation now belonged to organizations rather than individuals. He did not seek to reinsert himself. Emotional expression remained restrained. Tesla did not articulate loneliness or regret. He experienced narrowing rather than loss. His world reduced in scale, but it remained ordered. That order mattered more than breadth. The pigeons remained constant. Tesla continued feeding them daily, even as walking became more difficult. He noticed injuries, changes, absences. He responded with care. This routine provided quiet continuity when other connections faded. As physical strength diminished, Tesla spent more time in his room. He arranged papers carefully. He reviewed notes from earlier years, correcting and clarifying where necessary. He preserved what he believed mattered. He discarded what did not. Illness arrived not as crisis, but as accumulation. There was no dramatic collapse. Tesla's health declined quietly. He rested more. He slept longer. He spoke less. He accepted assistance when offered, but sparingly. He preferred independence. On the 7th of January 1943, Tesla died alone in his hotel room. There was no audience, no ceremony. A hotel maid discovered him later that day. The end was quiet, consistent with the life he had chosen. He was 86 years old. News of his death travelled quickly. Newspapers published retrospectives. Colleagues and commentators reassessed his contributions. Public recognition increased posthumously, though unevenly. Tesla was remembered as pioneer, visionary, and eccentric in equal measure. His belongings were modest: papers, notebooks, personal effects. Government authorities seized some materials briefly, citing national security concerns. Most were eventually returned to family. The contents revealed a life of disciplined thought rather than secret weaponry. Ideas, not devices. Tesla's passing did not produce immediate reassessment of his work's broader implications. That process would unfold gradually, over decades. At the time, his death marked the end of a singular life, not a turning point. The final rooms had contained no monument, no grand machinery. They contained routine, order, and attention. Tesla had reduced his life to essentials. He left it that way. Quiet aftershocks. Tesla's death did not arrive with immediate consequence. There was no interruption of systems, no sudden realization that something essential had been removed. Electricity continued to flow. Motors continued to turn. Cities remained lit through the night. The world he had helped build did not pause to acknowledge his absence. This was not indifference, so much as evidence of integration. His work had become ordinary, and ordinary things are rarely noticed until they fail. In the days following his death, newspapers published summaries of his life. These accounts varied in tone and accuracy. Some emphasized his early triumphs and later isolation. Others framed him as a misunderstood genius, ahead of his time. A few treated him as eccentric footnote. Tesla, no longer present to refine language or correct emphasis, could not influence these narratives. They settled unevenly, shaped by editorial needs rather than coherence. Government interest in his papers briefly complicated matters. Authorities reviewed his notebooks and documents, concerned about potential implications for national security. This attention was procedural rather than revelatory. No hidden devices emerged. No dormant weapons were uncovered. The papers contained what Tesla had always produced: calculations, reflections, speculative ideas, and careful notes. Eventually, most materials were released to family custody. The moment passed quietly. In professional circles, reassessment unfolded slowly. Engineers and historians revisited his patents and publications. Some recognized that ideas Tesla had explored decades earlier were resurfacing in new forms: automation, remote control, wireless communication, energy efficiency. These connections were not always acknowledged explicitly. They did not need to be. Ideas had moved on, adapted to different contexts. The infrastructure Tesla helped establish remained foundational. Alternating current systems expanded globally. Power grids became more interconnected. Standards improved. Reliability increased. These developments occurred through institutional effort, but their underlying logic traced back to Tesla's work. His influence persisted structurally rather than personally. Public interest in Tesla waxed and waned across decades. Periods of renewed fascination followed technological shifts that echoed his ideas. At other times, he receded into historical background. Myths accumulated gradually, often oversimplifying complexity. Tesla became symbol rather than subject, invoked to represent creativity, isolation, or unrecognized brilliance. Tesla himself had anticipated this. He understood that societies remember selectively. He did not expect fidelity. He valued coherence during life more than accuracy after death. His lack of effort to control legacy reflected this belief. The long-term impact of Tesla's work extended beyond technology. It influenced how engineers approach systems favoring scalability, efficiency, and integration. It demonstrated that abstract thinking could yield practical infrastructure when combined with persistence. It also illustrated the limitations of individual vision within economic and institutional structures. Tesla's life offered no clear moral resolution. He achieved profound influence without sustained power. He experienced recognition without security. He maintained discipline without reward proportional to contribution. These outcomes were not framed by him as injustice. They were understood as consequence of alignment and misalignment between idea and context. For historians, Tesla's story resists simplification. He was neither tragic hero nor forgotten martyr. He was an engineer shaped by temperament, timing, and structure. His successes and failures were intertwined. His isolation was partly chosen, partly imposed. His routines sustained him, where institutions could not. The quiet aftershocks of his life continued long after his death. Engineers built systems that echoed his principles without invoking his name. Researchers explored wireless transmission with tools unavailable in his time. Automation advanced along paths he had outlined conceptually. The world absorbed his ideas incrementally. Tesla's personal habits, discipline, order, restraint, did not translate into legacy narratives easily. They lacked drama, yet they were central to his endurance. They allowed him to work steadily across decades of uncertainty. They shaped a life oriented toward process rather than outcome. His final years, spent in controlled routine, did not diminish earlier achievements. They completed them. They demonstrated that meaning could persist without expansion. That inquiry could continue without recognition. That coherence mattered even when relevance faded. Tesla did not leave instructions for how to remember him. He did not curate his image. He allowed others to interpret freely. This absence of self-mythologizing stands in contrast to later portrayals that cast him as figure of spectacle. The reality was quieter. What remains is not a legend, but a body of work embedded in daily life. Lights that turn on reliably, motors that run efficiently, systems that transmit power across distance. These outcomes require no story. They function regardless of memory. Tesla's life ended as it had increasingly been lived alone, ordered and attentive. The world did not stop. It did not need to. His contributions had already been absorbed. The aftershocks were not dramatic. They were continuous. They continue still. Wind down. 300 words. As we come to the end of tonight's journey, there is no need to hold on to details. Tesla's life does not ask to be summarized or resolved. It settles more comfortably when allowed to rest as a sequence of steady days, careful habits, and long attention. Imagine the city at night, electricity moving quietly through wires, unseen and dependable. Rooms lit softly, streets calm between passing cars, systems operating without effort. This is the kind of impact Tesla lived to create present, reliable, and unremarkable in the best sense. There is nothing you need to remember precisely. Let the rhythm remain instead, the sense of continuity, the idea that a life can be meaningful without applause, productive without noise, complete without closure. As your breathing slows, think of routine as reassurance, a familiar path, a light that stays on, a hum in the background that tells you everything is working as it should. Tesla's story does not end with a lesson. It ends with quiet persistence, with work absorbed into the world, with attention released. So allow the details to fade now. Let the edges soften. The day is done. The systems are steady. Nothing is required of you.